Prologue. Grandma. 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 Tsume woke from a small nap she was taking sitting in the living room on one of the many couches in the Inuzuka compound. She didn't realize she had dozed off right after the dinner she made for her grandchildren. She gave a loud yawn as Kuramaru gained an awareness of her consciousness and perked his ear up. Her adjusting to wake up was short-lived, however, as her two young and feisty grandchildren came running into the living room laughing as they kept saying her name. It warmed her heart to see them so active at their age. She was happy she was just able to see them, period. She didn't think she'd be around long enough to meet her grandchildren, but there they are. They both stopped in front of her with a big hopeful smile on their face. To the right, her grandson Kayasato held something behind his back. He was the oldest of the two, yet still a pup in the eyes of his grandmother. His appearance strongly resembled that of his father Kiba. His hair was just as shaggy and the same color, only shorter, the length barely touching the forehead at all. His eyes had the exact same look at his father's as well. His birthmark clearly indicating his alignment with the Inuzuka clan. It made Tsume cry sometimes seeing Kayasato would remind her of Kiba so much when he was a boy she felt like she was in a flashback. He wore a similar outfit that his father did when he was his age. Mostly mesh but comfortable. Her granddaughter stood to her left right by her brother's side. Just as beautiful as her mother, and at such a young age it surprised her just as much as her brother. Selena was maybe a few years younger than Kayasato, around 5 or so, her brother being around 7. The noticeable birthmarks easily labeled them apart from the rest of the clan, while her hair and facial features resembled her mother more so than anything else. Her eyes carried the exact same color green. Shade for shade, no mistaking it. Her hair was short but straight and very fine. It held a dark reddish color. Tsume amused herself at the thought of Kiba and Sakura's hair color mixing in together to create the finished product. Kayasato. She began looking at him. Yes, Grandma? Kayasato replied with a big grin across his face like he had done something wrong. What is it you have behind your back, pup? Kayasato shook his head. Nua, Grandma. You have to guess what it is first. Tsume knew what it was by the scent of the headband. It was faint, but it was definitely Kiba's. She figured she could play along though. She thought out loud, looking at Kuramaru with an obviously fine sense of grasp of the situation. What do you think it is, Kuramaru? Kuramaru was old. Definitely in his senile years. His days of fighting had been long done ever since sometime after pain invaded the leaf. All he was at that point was a simple companion. He knew if he tried he could still fight. But for now he was forcefully enjoying his retirement. He loved the new pups as much as Tsume did, but he was definitely cranky from being woken up. He quickly stood up and sniffed the air. He walked behind Kayasato and tugged on his hand, pulling the headband from him. Ah, Kuramaru, you're no fun. Kayasato pouted as he stamped his foot. You haven't awakened your sense of smell yet, pup. It will become vital in the next few years when you enter the academy. When it does, finding simple things such as these will prove a simple task. He answered, setting the headband on the coffee table, separating Tsume from her grandchildren. Tsume looked at the headband, happily reminded of the younger days with her son. His first days at the academy, his first missions, his first love, and looking up at Kayasato, his firstborn. Grandma Selena spoke up, swaying her right foot around while looking at the ground. Yes? What is it? Kayasato pointed to the headband. Grandma? Can you tell us the story about how Mom and Dad met? Tsume was surprised by the request, yet touched by their want of knowing their parents' past. She nodded her head. Come here, pups. I'll tell you everything you want to know. She motioned for them to join her, and they happily jumped to the couch, cuddling up next to their grandmother, looking up at her in anticipation. So what is it that you want to know? Everything, Grandma. Selena cried. And Mommy too. Tell us about Mommy. Tsume smiled again. She really did enjoy this. Reminiscing about the past with her new family was something that helped keep her memory sharp and remind her of the great things their parents brought into the world. All right, pups, listen close and listen well. Your mother and father's names are Sakura Haruno and Kiba Inuzuka. Kayasato raised his hand as if he was in a classroom wanting to ask a question. Grandma. Why does Mom have a different clan name? And why doesn't she have the birthmark? And Kuramaru barked, silencing Kayasato as it startled him. Listen, pup. You will learn. He stated before setting his head back down, listening while keeping his mind focused on resting. Now then. She continued. Where do we start? Chapter 1. Man, this is really starting to bug me, Kiba thought to himself, walking with Akamaru from the training fields after a long day of training with his team. He knew he was getting stronger, he just didn't feel that the way he was progressing was the way he should have been going. He stopped and thought about that. Did that even make sense? He shrugged and kept walking, Akamaru giving a single bark to his master. Yeah, buddy, I know. We'll swing by Ichiraku's. How about that? Kiba stared at Akamaru, keeping a steady pace. Akamaru gave a short but loud howl. His expression for his high desire to return to Ichiraku's for a nice hot bowl of ramen. Kiba simply laughed at his response. Missed it that much, huh? Race you. Kiba said, immediately taking off, leaving his unnoticeably large companion in the dust for a brief moment before he heard a distant arf and his scent coming closer. Finally arriving at the shop, Kiba called the race a tie, ruffling his best friend's head fur as they entered. He was surprised to see Lee and Guy-sensei sitting and eating. He never really ran into them. He took a seat right next to Lee as Tucci noticed him and headed over to him. Hey there, Kiba. What'll it be? Same as usual for me and Akamaru. Akamaru barked in reply, his select few hairs standing up on his head, the only thing being noticeable by Tucci. Well, hey there, Akamaru. Tucci greeted him with a wave. He didn't ever notice how huge the dog had gotten. Before, Kiba would always carry him around in his jacket or on his head. Now he was sure if he tried to now he would end up in a coma. Arf. Arf. Akamaru replied back. Kiba smiled. He's glad to see you, Tucci. He's the one who's been wanting to come here out of the two of us the most. Tucci smiled. Kiba was a good customer. Naruto had him beat, but that was Naruto. Kiba and Akamaru came pretty often, ate a lot, paid the bill, made some nice conversation, and were off. Tucci took their order and walked off to prepare the ramen. Kiba turned to Lee and Guy-sensei, who met Lee at first glance. Kiba. Lee proclaimed, reaching over to pat him on the shoulder as a greeting. Kiba returned the gesture, patting the opposite shoulder. Hey, Lee. Hey, Guy-sensei. Guy looked up from eating to greet Kiba. Kiba. How are you, son? As he greets him with his signature thumbs up and the ever so memorable ping sound coming from the shininess of his teeth. Pretty good, sensei, I'm just getting done with training for today. Me and Akamaru have been up for a while now. Akamaru quickly responded with a bark. What? Al. Ready? Guy replied. Kiba was confused. What did he mean by already? They'd been training since 8. And they went for a morning run at 7 for an hour straight. Non-stop. We are merely taking a break, Kiba. Lee stepped in. We have been training since before the sun even rose from the horizons. After this we will continue until the sun sets. Right, Guy-sensei? Guy responded with a nod. Kiba couldn't believe that. They trained that much? Sunrise to sunset? Jesus. He thought. I know I train a lot, but there's no way that can be human. Then it hit him. Kurenai-sensei was a fantastic teacher. He would never doubt her skills. But he knew that her methods of teaching weren't quite meeting what he had been expecting. Especially someone like himself who was all about his speed and close quarters combat. He could do decent ninjutsu and his genjutsu was passable at least. But he figured he might as well give it a shot. Maybe Guy-sensei would train him? He quickly finished his ramen. Akamaru was still eating his, but he figured if he stopped them from leaving he'd let his friend eat at his own pace. Well, Kiba, we're going to be getting back to training now. We'll see, yo. He was cut off as Kiba abruptly stood up. Guy-sensei. Both the master and apprentice stopped. Kiba sounded out of breath all of a sudden. Like he had been wanting to say that for a long time, holding his breath and everything. Guy-sensei, he said in between breaths. I want to train under you, he said, pumping his fist into the air. Both Lee and Guy were taken back by this request. Guy knew Kiba was a good ninja, but he didn't think he wanted to break away from his team. He figured Kurenai ran them hard enough to where it would suffice. But he had a feeling Kiba had more energy after the day was over with. And he was more than willing to expand the limits of his students if they desire so. I'm not sure. Lee? What do you think? Guy asked for his opinion in a skeptical tone. Kiba Inuzuka is a great ninja. He is almost as fast as I am, if not faster. Him and Akamaru are a formidable team, the new Chunin stated. Guy nodded. All right. Now Kiba, I want you to tell me why you want me to train you. And be honest with me. What do you seek to gain from training with me if I train you? Kiba cleared his throat. Well, there's a few reasons. One is because although I greatly admire Kurenai-sensei as a great teacher, I don't feel that I'm getting the right training specifically for my capabilities. Yeah. Arf. Akamaru added in, licking his bowl clean. Oh yeah. He turned back to face Guy and Lee. Another reason is even though I feel like I'm pretty fast, I don't think I'm as fast as I could be. And I've seen Lee move before, and when he takes those weights off, he takes off at speeds I have trouble following. I know taijutsu is your specialty, Guy-sensei. That's why I want to train under you. Shino and the others, they know I'm not ditching them. We'll still go on missions and such. I just want to spend the free time I have training with you guys. Kiba finishes, taking a deep sigh after speaking a mouthful. Akamaru barked back twice. Kiba looked at him. Really? You want me to say that? All right, Akamaru, but I'm only doing this 'cause you think it'll work. He thought back to himself. And because I know I could have asked someone else like Asuma-sensei or Kakashi-sensei, but I know I couldn't settle for anything less than the best, and that's why I asked you first, Guy-sensei. Kiba begged the young Inuzuka, now on his knees. That did it. Might Guy was convinced. Lee will have to get up extra early tomorrow. Why is that, sensei? Guy brought his right thumb out to its renowned position. Because we're picking up a new student in the morning. He finished before his signature ping sound escapes his perfectly white smile. Kiba jumped to his feet. Holy shit. It worked. I guess that's really all I had to do to begin with. Really? He asked to confirm. Yep. Starting tomorrow you will be training exclusively with me and Lee round the clock unless Lady Tsunade sends you on a mission, in which case we will allow you to leave. Kiba cheered as he tackled Akamaru, breaking out into a small wrestling matching with Kiba ending up rubbing his belly in the end out of excitement. I will warn you though, Kiba. Guy started. I expect you to be ready to go in the morning when we arrive at your home. We don't wait for others to join us. We go and get them, and we run together to help get the blood flowing for the day ahead of us. It is what will help get you started on the path to being a true follower of my ninja way. This was exciting to Kiba. He knew Guy-sensei was pretty goofy, but he also knew that he was one of the best ninja the village ever had, period. He was hoping this could be his and Akamaru's big break. Awesome, Guy-sensei. I can't wait. I guess I should get going if I'm going to be ready for tomorrow then. Kiba said, putting his hands behind his head. Akamaru took to his side, wagging his tail at the good news. See you guys tomorrow morning? Kiba said, walking out, but was stopped by Guy. Hold on a minute, Kiba. He said. There's something I want to give you. He goes through his backpack to uncover a spare green jumpsuit. An exact replica of the one he and Lee use. He tosses it over to Kiba, who tries absolutely as hard as he can to stop himself from busting out laughing as he catches it. Thanks, Guy-sensei. He wasn't sure what to say. Was he really supposed to train in this? Aw man, I'm gonna look like a total geek in this. He thought to himself. A horrid image of him, Lee and Guy, came to his mind, all in the exact same outfit. Next thing you knew, Akamaru was going to be inducted into the suit, and they'd look even nerdier, along with a simultaneous four-way ping from their dastardly white teeth giving a thumbs up. But he figured he could swallow his pride if it was going to help him get stronger. After all, he had his eyes on someone for a few months now that a certain Uchiha had ran away from the village. He figured if something like this could get her to notice him save the wacky jumpsuit, he would give it everything he had to make himself known. No problem, Kiba. Wear it with pride. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Let's go, Lee. Lee nods as they disappear with a puff of smoke. Kiba quickly tucked away the jumpsuit into his back pocket. Lucky for him, it was easy to stuff away and his pockets were big enough. His old fur jacket wouldn't have been enough to hold the silly thing. You're getting the bill? Generous, my boy. Tucci spoke up, handing a single bill accounting for Guy Lee himself and Akamaru. All that was heard out of the little ramen shop was a loud scream. Why? Was heard down a few blocks, catching the attention of Kakashi, who was enjoying the latest issue of Make Out Paradise. Sounds like Guy found himself another student. Poor Kiba. Kakashi thought, flipping to the next page, letting out a sigh. Certainly not a way to win girls over. He said out loud. Kiba looked in angst as he flipped his wallet back and forth. It was completely cleaned out. How did he know they were going to do something like that? He gained a new teacher but lost all his money to over a dozen bowls of ramen. Arf. Akamaru said to him. Kiba nods his head and smiles. Okay. Let's go, I'll race you home. We gotta get ready for whatever Guy Sensei throws at us. Ready? He puts himself down onto all fours. Tucci simply watches the boy in amusement. He really was a wild kid. Go. Him and Akamaru jumped through the entrance into the street. Well, Akamaru did. Kiba, on the other hand, went right into the right side of a person, causing them to collapse on him as he fell over. Kiba Inuzuka! Yelled a familiar and equally frightening voice. Aw man. Kiba knew what he had just done. Quite frankly, he just wished he could stay in his position on the ground staring at the clouds. The person finally grabbed Kiba, bringing him right in front of her face. Kiba gave a cheesy laugh followed by an equally corny grin. Hey Sakura. Chapter 2. Why don't you watch where you're going? Even Akamaru knew where to go, you idiot, what were you thinking? Sakura yelled at Kiba, violently shaking his fearful body back and forth, not giving him a chance to respond or defend himself. Yep, he thought to himself. No mistaking the scent. It's definitely Sakura. She finally let go of him as she went and began picking up some fruit that had fallen out of the bag she was carrying. Kiba, still recovering from his dizziness, finally came to seeing straight and remembered where he was. Sakura was definitely upset, but she was still pretty when she was in a frightening sort of way. She didn't dress fancy. She dressed totally normal. But it was enough for him to get lost a bit. The way her eyebrows furrowed, giving her gorgeous green eyes an angle that was a compliment to her look, even if she didn't want to admit it. You know, you're lucky none of this stuff is bruised or splattered when it hit the ground. I'm taking Lady Tsunade's groceries back to the office, and she wouldn't be too pleased if a certain ninja incapacitated her grocery girl. Kiba stood up, stretching his arms outward. Sorry, Sakura. Me and Akamaru were just really excited and wanted to head home. You see, Sakura tried hiding her laughter as she covered her mouth, pointing to Kiba. He quickly looked at himself. Nothing. What was she pointing at? He turned around. Nothing. Sakura then tugged something out of his pocket. Oh no. He thought. The jumpsuit. It must have slipped out when she shook the life out of me just now. Aw man, this is just great. He thought as he embarrassingly turned around slowly, his blush unable to be seen due to his birthmark. Sakura merely giggled as she pulled the jumpsuit away from Kiba, waving it around like a flag until Akamaru intervened with a bark. Kiba. She started. Care to explain this funny-looking thing in your pocket? Yeah, he attempted to speak but sighed. She was still giggling at him. This is such a pain. Next thing you know, Ino will know, and when Ino knows, you might as well send a flyer to everybody's freaking doorstep in the village. Oh no, I'm sure you have a perfectly good reason for having this lay around. Don't ya? She smiled, surrendering the suit back to him. Kiba took it back before clearing his throat, his blush deepening, becoming noticeable at this point. Yes, well. That's why I was so excited and crashed into you. I'm training with Guy Sensei tomorrow and he insisted on me wearing he flops the frilly jumpsuit around some. This. He finished. She giggled again. She couldn't help it. He looked like a kid who just picked up a piece of paper that had waterfall on it. And the thought of him wearing that suit just gave her an awkward image. Oh. Sakura reached into her pouch, pulling a scroll out. Lady Tsunade wanted me to give this to you. Kiba took the scroll after putting the suit back into his pocket, merely scrunching it together to force room without breaking the button to his pocket. Thanks, Sakura. He grabbed a tomato on the ground, breathed on it and gave it a quick wipe before handing it to her. Sakura smiled and took it back, adding it to the bag she was carrying. Thank you, Kiba. I should be going now. I still have some work she needs me to do. Oh, hang on, Sakura. Kiba stopped her before she set herself back in motion. Do you need any help? Me and Akamaru wouldn't mind helping you carry some of the stuff back. Right? He looked at Akamaru, who was now standing by Sakura, giving a simple bark in response, agreeing with his master. Oh no. It's fine, really. As long as no strange boys come charging out of ramen shops on all fours and crash into me, I should be able to manage. She laughed but lost her grip, with her right hand being a tear in the bag from when she fell over. Kiba immediately noticed the rip and reached under the bag, unintentionally putting his hand underneath Sakura's to keep the weight on the food in the bag. That was close, he thought. At least he thought before looking at a now pink-faced Sakura who was only staring at him in complete surprise. Huh? He thought before looking at his hand. Oh man, way to go, Kiba. He sighed to himself. Kiba quickly removed his hand but remembered why when a clove of garlic fell from underneath it. He quickly caught it and placed up under the hole and put Sakura's hand under it in place of his. Sorry about that. Instinct. But really, it would be no problem. At the least we can take a few things out of the bag so it would be easier to carry. He knew this was a horrible reason. Sakura has displayed on many occasions her inhuman strength and knew a simple bag of fruits and vegetables wasn't much of a hassle to carry. Putting his foot in the door, however, could prove to be a hassle. Sakura giggled at Kiba's reflexes. He was just as fast as ever. She figured he was offering and it would give her someone to talk to while she made her way back to work. So she surrendered to his offer. Okay. You win, Kiba. He smirked, grabbing a couple of pieces of fruit. Few tomatoes here and a few carrots. Before he knew it, he had to carry all said items by crossing his arms and using that as his way of carrying it. Akamaru followed in between them as they approached the Hokage mansion. Sakura looked over at Kiba, who was obviously staring off into space as they walked. He was so easily distracted sometimes. But it was nice to know he was still the same from the looks of it. Yeah, right. I totally see you checking him out. Admitted that scruffy boy look drives you wild. Inner Sakura commented, clearly trying to push her buttons. Get out of here. Kiba's totally not even my type anyway. She thought back to herself. Inner Sakura merely stuck her tongue out as she disappeared. Well, his hair is a mess. He works himself like a dog. Heck, he almost looked like one when he wore that fur coat of his a few years ago. But at the same time he seems more mature. Not quite a man yet, but certainly not a boy anymore. She rambled in her head. Akamaru gave a slight whine as he tugged on his master's pant leg, getting his attention. Kiba looked down at his companion as they finished up the stairs. What's up, Akamaru? He whined again, shifting his head to back the other way towards the door. Huh. You're right, I don't smell her either. Hey Sakura, did you know the Hokage isn't here right now? Sakura nodded. Yeah, I know. She's off doing something with the other officials of the village. I'm only picking up some groceries for her the next time she has a hangover. I swear the way she goes through sake is something I will never understand. They finally reached the office and Sakura pressed the bag against the wall, temporarily giving her a free hand as she reached for her key, obtained it, and opened the door. They approached the desk littered with paperwork and set the groceries down before figuring out what to do with them. Kiba then remembered the scroll Sakura gave her. He opened it while they were there, figuring if it was really important he could just wait for the Hokage to come back. Kiba Inuzuka. Upon review of your past missions and previous experience in terms of leadership capabilities and pulling a successful run at the previous Chunin exams, I, Lady Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, along with other members of the board, would like to congratulate you and award you the title of Chunin. Please report to the events room in the main floor of the Hokage mansion at 5:30 p.m. sharp for your inauguration. Your 5th Hokage, Lady Tsunade. Sakura only watched as Kiba dropped the scroll in absolute shock. I'm a Chunin? Sakura blinked as she quickly put two and two together. The scroll she handed to him must have been his acceptance letter to the next rank. Yes. I did it. Akamaru. Arf. We did it. He proclaimed, correcting himself as he recognized his partner in crime as he grabbed Sakura, embracing her in a tight hug and spinning her around in complete cheer, laughing the while. Sakura was totally baffled by his sudden reaction. And dizzy too. Kiba, finally calming down, set Sakura down, still holding her. Sorry about that. You okay? Sakura was still pretty dizzy. The three Kibas in front of her kept gathering into one, only to separate into three again and repeating themselves. She finally came to realizing she was still in the arms of her captor. Quickly they broke apart in a sudden realization of what was still going on. Sakura's face was nearing the color of her hair. Lucky no one was around to see them besides Akamaru. Kiba wasn't nearly as fazed, despite looking a little confused at how quickly she spun around after he released her. Sorry about that. I guess I got a little carried away. Kiba laughed, scratching the back of his head. Humph. She exclaimed. Akamaru tilted his head in confusion before giving a weak whine. What? Of course I have time, Akamaru. Kiba said, looking around at the clock to examine the time, 5:27 p.m. Never mind. Let's go, Akamaru. Kiba said, heading for the door, running back in to grab the scroll next to Sakura's feet before running back out. Sorry about that, Sakura. I'll be sure to warn you next time I'm about to do something like that. His voice slowly carried away as he made his way down the stairs. Sakura's face was still pink. Not with embarrassment, not at all. His body felt so strong. So controlling. She never saw him without a shirt on, but judging by how he held her, he had to have been doing some serious training to get muscles like that. It was a nice feeling, but she didn't want to get the wrong idea about Kiba. He's a nice boy, loves his dog, loves his family. Cha. And he's a total hottie with a body that would totally take you to town. Inner Sakura quickly exclaimed. Her pink face darkened into a stronger red and she clamped her hands over her ears, attempting to get rid of that thought. Even though technically she thought of it. That was weird. She never thought about that to Kiba. Then again, when did she ever really talk to him? Crap. I'm gonna be late. Okay. 2 lefts and it'll be the double door on the right. Almost there. Kiba thought as he and Akamaru raced down the halls of the Hokage mansion. Finally coming to their last left, they skidded past the hall as they regained momentum and rushed down the hall to the double doors on the right. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he opened the door to find the entire official board of the Hidden Lead Village sitting on a far-off table, with Shino and Hinata blocking Tsunade's immediate view of spotting Kiba. Kiba. Glad you could make it with literally 1 minute to spare. Tsunade spoke with slight irritation. Kiba rubbed the back of his head as he approached his team, taking Shino's left as his place to stand, Hinata on the far right. He looked at the clock above the long table of officials. 5:29 p.m. He really did barely make it. If you had been any longer, we would have had to wait another 6 months for the next Chunin exam to end for us to receive our official recognition. Shino sternly stated, keeping his stance facing forward. Kiba shrugged his shoulders. I just found out a few minutes ago. I got here as soon as I heard. That's enough. Both of you. Now that you're both here, we can officially begin. Tsunade said, putting her pen down. The three of you have been called here due to a number of reasons. The first being that your previous mission experiences have gradually accumulated over the past few years. Your success rate has gone from a 67% success rate all the way up to a 92%. Because of this, you can be depended on for most missions as your success rate has been going up steadily. The second reason being your impressive displays last Chunin exam. All three of the same team not only advanced to the actual final event, but they also managed to all win their first round. It shows your training has proved successful and your ability to adapt has been showing itself more and more. Although none of you won the actual tournament, the important thing is to not pay attention to such things as winning and losing. I can use Shikamaru as a perfect example. He didn't advance past the first round of his match against Temari, yet he was the only one who made Chunin that year. Tsunade rose from her seat, taking 3 purple rectangular boxes and setting them parallel to each of the Chunin to bees. As of now, you are all rewarded the title of Chunin. This title will require much more from you and demand much more diligence on the battlefield. You can each now lead a squad and are expected to practice strategies with either each other or other jonin. Be aware your rank can be stripped due to inhumane conduct within the village, excessive violence between fellow members, and issues of insubordination. Are there any questions? All three merely stared at Tsunade. Shino's right eyebrow quirked up. Hinata tapped her fingers together while looking up at Tsunade, then back down, and Kiba just scratched the back of his head, with Akamaru breaking the silence. No, Lady Hokage. They simultaneously responded. She stood up and walked towards the other side of the long table. She reached for the box on the left, Kiba's. She approached him and handed him the box. Kiba bowed and accepted. She moved on and repeated with Shino and Hinata. Kiba was totally surprised by this even now after hearing the news. He didn't think he'd make Chunin this year. You may each open your boxes and receive your gift, for which I and the higher-ups of the village have bestowed upon to you. Kiba looked up and noticed more familiar faces in the background. To Tsunade's left were Kakashi on the right and Gaia on the left. To her right, Asuma to the left and Kurenai to the right. All of which held a noticeable and proud smile that more and more of the genin were beginning to grow up into full-fledged ninjas. They each opened their boxes. Kiba especially was surprised. Although he should have guessed it. Inside was the official Chunin Vesta status within clothing that Kiba did not think he would wear ever. The perfect olive green that made the vest that much more appealing. He smiled as he took the vest out of the box, removed his black jacket and tried it on. It fit him perfectly. Perhaps they were specifically sized to fit? He watched as the other two tried theirs on. Hinata looked proud of herself as she blushed at Kiba looking at her, waving to him. Underneath the vest was another headband. Except the cloth supporting the metal was black, not blue like the one he had been wearing all this time. Excited at the thought of a cool new change, he replaced his blue headband with the black, tightening the grip as he tied the knot to the back of his head. Shino was even more surprising. It had been a while since he actually saw his full face. He looked like a regular person who just liked wearing sunglasses inside. And bugs everywhere. It's gonna be a good day. Sakura finally finished restocking everything she needed to for Tsunade's office. Medical supplies, food storages, and finally finished alphabetizing ninja file records. She thought out loud, reaching for the files. Her fingers danced along the top as she finally came to a stop at the file marker I. Thinning her search out more, she finally found the name she was looking for. Inuzuka Kiba/Akamaru. She opened the file, which was surprisingly fairly full. She figured it was to hold all of Akamaru's files as well. Opening the file, she found a picture of Kiba holding Akamaru in a playful chokehold. Akamaru merely had his head tilted to the sideways towards Kiba, which made her laugh at the image. What a goof. She thought out again. She was fairly impressed with how many missions he had completed. Some of which he did by himself. It was a younger picture still when he was wearing his coat with the fur on it, but at the point where Akamaru had grown to his enormous size. Boys and their dogs. She sighed. Hey! You still here? Sakura quickly turned around, putting the file behind her in case it was Tsunade. Luckily it was only Kiba, wearing a newly donned Chunin vest. Oh. Yeah. I was just about to leave actually. She nervously chuckled, rising and placing the file back in place as quickly as she could without having him notice. Hey. What are you doing with that file? Kiba asked, now at her side, looking at the cabinet that was just closed. Nothing. It's classified. Kiba crossed his arms, smirking. Is it now? This Chunning may have to pull rank on you if you can't at least give him a clue. Raising his eyebrows up, moving his eyes from her to the cabinet, repeating the eye process a few times. Kiba already could smell it on her. The file was his. He could smell the scent from ink of the pen he used the day he signed his name years ago. It was easy, it only stayed in one place and hardly touched wind, so it was generally a steady scent. Humph. Some Chunin. Abusing his powers already? Sakura crossed her arms, looking towards the side. Kiba was still the cocky, arrogant, childish, gorgeous, well-built, handsome, faithful. She repeated the thoughts in her head as her eyes opened from the thoughts crossing her head. What did I just say? She questioned herself. Fine. I knew you made Chunin, so I wanted to look at your file and see what you had done that made the Hokage award you the title. She sighed. Well? She looked at him, confused. Well, what? Did I meet your expectations? He grinned, still checking out his new vest he was still in love with. She started, but interrupted by her inner self. Damn right you did. Come here, you. Take me. We. Sakura quickly shook her head, dismissing the inner thoughts. She can't believe she all of a sudden started thinking that. Well, you do need a bit more work. But you definitely aren't worth being kept at a genin anymore. She said, putting her hands on her hips. Honestly, had it been anyone else, Kiba would have been all over them, in their face, the works. But when she commanded respect, it wasn't like any sort of offense to him. It was kind of a turn on, and he wasn't sure why. He always thought she was cute, but over the years he had a hard time keeping his eyes off her. Something about her demanding this and yelling that, but carrying that sweet look on her face, just screamed for him to make a move. He figured now was his first and maybe best chance to at least get in a meal with her. I mean, if she says no, he'll just try again later. Or get Akamaru to help out. Either works. Hey Sakura, are you done? For today? Kiba nodded. Yeah, I am. Why? Kiba gulped and petted Akamaru's head before asking his question. Do you want to grab dinner or something tomorrow? He smiled, scratching the back of his head, nervously awaiting the worst-case scenario. Sakura blushed at the question and the thought of going out with him. I mean, she had to work in the hospital tomorrow, and it was an early shift. Yes. What are you waiting for? Say yes already. Her subconscious screamed. She smiled, clearing her throat before speaking. Kiba brought his head down. Ah, geez. It's okay. I didn't mean to just pounce on you like that. I'm just real excited about just being promoted, and I would love to have dinner with you. Kiba's eyes opened as wide as they could as he picked his head back up to face her. She was smiling. Didn't look like pity either. He could smell it. She was nervous just like he was, but he could smell the truth in her. Akamaru wagged his tail in excitement for the good news, giving a quick bark in response to his master's quick change in facial feature. Oh boy. Kiba said out loud. What? Sakura asked. I was just expecting a big fat no, honestly. He nervously chuckled. Akamaru whining as he now leaned his head down. She smiled. Now came the question of how soon she could get over to Ino's house to get some serious planning in. Or maybe she should ask Hinata for some advice on what to do with him. Was tonight even a good idea? Well, what time is going to be okay for you and Akamaru? She asked, walking up to them, petting Akamaru at the top of his head, who wagged his tail in appreciation. How does 8 sound? He asked Akamaru, giving him an approving bark. She nodded. That sounds great. I should get home then. I'm tired from working all day, and after being assaulted by some crazy dog boy in front of the ramen shop earlier today, I need some sleep. She winked at him, making Kiba give a noticeable blush bleeding right through his triangular birthmark. Oh. Hee hee. Yeah. I'll work on that. He replied as Sakura began heading for the door. Akamaru whined at him, nudging his head against his leg. Huh? Oh, you're right. He whispered to him. Hey, Sakura. She turned her head back into the door just as she was about to vanish from sight. Yeah. Would it be okay if I walked you home? She returned her head back to the hallway out of his sight, giving a much deeper blush than she had given before. Who knew he was such a gentleman? That would be nice. She replied, being heard from behind the wall. Kiba gave a quick fist pump into the air in victory as he and Akamaru ran out to her side. He tucked his hands away in his fresh new pockets as they began descending down the stairs. They made their way out of the mansion and down towards her home. Only a few blocks away. Kiba kept looking up at the sky. It was a really beautiful night. He could smell Sakura. It became a familiar scent to him, memorizing it completely at this point. And it was hard not to. Her scent was amazing. Rich ripe cherries filled his nostrils every time he inhaled the oxygen around him. But he could also smell her anxiety. Was she nervous about something? Hey, you okay? He asked, still staring at the night sky. Yeah, just thinking. Do you want to talk about it? His attention now facing her, who was facing him all the while he was stargazing. It's just everything, I guess. She sighed. Between the Akatsuki coming soon and Naruto still off training still for the next few months and Sasuke still gone, I'm just really confused on what's going to happen, when it'll happen, and who is going to be affected by it. Kiba cringed at the name of Sasuke entering his ear canal. Still, I can't blame her. Not like that asshole will show his face here again though. And if he does, me and Akamaru are gonna have something to say about that. He decided in his head. He knew he couldn't beat Sasuke now. No way. If he's with Orochimaru, he'll be learning all kinds of crazy things. He needed to be at his best in case the worst came to worst. No, it's okay. I know what you mean. He finally responds out loud. There's not a lot any of us can do. Only so much. And even with that amount we can do, sometimes it just isn't enough. He stopped after he noticed her stopping. It looks like they had made it to her home. The lights were all out as expected. It was already past 10 o'clock. One thing I do know, he began, is that even if you can't do it, even if your best friend can't do it, even if the Hokage can't do it, someone else can do it. Someone can bring the right that this village and this whole planet needs. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's you. Heck, maybe it's Naruto. You never know. His words completely took her off guard. Was this the Kiba that she knew back from the academy? He seemed so deep. This sounded like something Kakashi or Shikamaru would say. Except Kakashi would be reading something and Shikamaru would be commenting on how not being able to stop things from happening was a real drag. Kiba seemed hopeful though. Not too set on what was going to happen, but he was at least hopeful some good would come when the bad showed itself. She unlocked the door but turned to him with a sincere smile on her face. Kiba, thanks. I needed that. She said, embracing her arms around his midsection, placing the left side of her face into his chest. It felt good that Kiba had a side of him that thought. Not just something that acted. Maybe tomorrow would go better than she thought. She was already indulging on the idea before they even got home. Kiba gave a slight blush before giving himself his signature "I'm so cool" smile, hugging her back, wrapping his arms around her back. Her scent was so powerful. So filled with flavor. Even by just having his chin perched up on her head, the smell was so arousing yet serene and calming. It helped him take his mind off the day, off of tomorrow, off of everything. Damn, I'm good. Yeah. He thought to himself. She finally pulled away from him, both releasing their grip from each other. She waved goodbye to Kiba before opening the door to her home and closing it behind her. Kiba's smile grew wide. So wide he felt that if anyone saw him they'd think he began experimenting with the latest substances that were being smuggled in from the land of lightning. He quickly ran home, Akamaru quickly following behind him. He entered his house, quickly making his way up to his room, passing his mother and sister without even noticing them, keeping his big goofy grin the entire time he made his way upstairs to his room. He opened his room and hopped on his bed. He stared at the ceiling. Thinking about the day had really done wonders for him. Being a Chunin was great, but it didn't amount to his plans for tomorrow. He looked at the clock. 10:39 p.m. He had enough time to grab some sleep before Guy and Lee showed up that morning. Akamaru licked his hand, getting his attention. "How do you think I did, boy?" he barked as a response. Kiba immediately translating into his head. "Yeah. I think I could have too. But what's the rush, right? I got time." Akamaru whined as he circled himself a few times before laying down, curled up at the foot of Kiba's bed. "Ah, you're worrying too much, buddy. I'll be fine. After tomorrow's training I'm going to be the one who's jealous of you. Getting to rest that much quicker than I will and all." Akamaru merely snorted as he slowly returned to giving nothing but silent breathing patterns. Kiba sat back up, removing his vest and all the essential outerwear and grabbing a loose pair of sleep pants and keeping his undershirt on. He finally rested back in his bed, wrapping himself up, preparing for tomorrow's training mentally. "Aw man, I just remembered fucking jumpsuit." Chapter 3. Kiba. Kiba's eyes immediately shot open as he quickly jerked in surprise, falling off his bed. His mother was standing above him upside down due to his awkward position. "Mom?" He sat up, looking at the clock. It was still dark. Why was she waking him up? After his eyes adjusted to the atmosphere, he looked at the clock correctly. 4:32 a.m. Might Guy and Rock Lee are in front of the house, jogging in place. They have been for the past 5 minutes and say they're waiting for you to come train with them. Kiba completely forgot about training as he looked around for Akamaru, who was right next to him the whole time. In his mouth was the soon-to-be famous green jumpsuit as he let go of it and set it next to him. "Sorry, Mom. I forgot to tell you that. We can talk about that strong scent of the Haruno girl when you get home, pup. I suggest you get down there and stop keeping your eager friends from waiting." Kiba merely giggled as he scratched the back of his head. "Totally forgot about that. I guess it would have been nice to tell them when I got home, but I'll forget it. Tonight is the night. Arf." Kiba forgot about the jumpsuit as he was about to pull some clothes out of his drawer. Damn it. This suit is just a bad omen. He sighed in defeat as he removed his sleep pants and figured out how he was going to put the suit on. The neck was incredibly elastic. There was no zipper, so he figured he might have to literally stretch through the neck. As he attempted, he found it successful as he finally put it all on. He looked at himself in the full-view mirror in his room, putting his Chunin vest on. He was completely taken back by how much he resembled the two downstairs. If his hair was formed in a bowl-cut fashion, the only thing separating their appearance would be his birthmark. He zipped his vest up, tying his new headband to his forehead before looking over at Akamaru. He whined as he tilted his head to the side. "Come on. You think I'm a big fan of this thing too? But if it'll help, it'll help," he said before taking off downstairs. He walked past the living room table and grabbed a banana, quickly finishing it, grabbed another one and peeled it for Akamaru before handing it to him. As soon as he saw his companion inhale the fruit, he headed towards the door and opened it. About 20 feet down the walkway were Guy and Lee, still jogging in place. It must have been about 2 or 3 minutes since his mom woke him up. "Why do I have a feeling this is going to be harder than I originally thought?" "Come on, Kiba," Guy said, waving him over. "We're a few minutes behind schedule, so we'll have to make it to the training grounds in about 3 minutes to make it on time." Lee quickly interrupted. "I think we can make it in half a minute, Sensei." Kiba merely developed a sweat drop as he listened to their conversation. "Jesus, what have I done?" "Right. Coming, Guy Sensei." Kiba ran towards them as the four of them took off down the road in a quick jog, nearly running speed. Kiba liked going on runs. Even if it was in the early morning in a ridiculous green jumpsuit that made him look like part of a cult with Guy and Lee. It was refreshing. If he hadn't ran in the morning, he was either sick on a mission or still asleep. At least this he could handle. You are doing very well so far, Kiba Lee commented. Thanks, but I regularly do this. So this isn't too bad. He replied. Even with the weights inside the leg warmers of your suit? Lee asked, questioned but seemed impressed. Kiba looked completely puzzled. Weights inside the leg warmers? He looked down at the orange leg warmers that came with the suit. He figured it was just a one piece that had nothing. And surely if there were weights he would have felt them, right? Guy stopped his jog while Lee continued his. Sorry about that, Kiba. I should have done that when you first came out. One moment. Guy reached into his bag, pulling out 2 long sets of weights. Kiba remembered Shino telling him Lee used those against Gaara. And he'd also remembered how much those things weighed. All right, Kiba, put these inside your leg warmers and wrap them up around them. Then we'll continue. Kiba just looked shocked at how easily Guy was holding the weights. He remembered when Lee took them off, several tiles at the Chunin exams broke apart, or so he heard from Shino. He nodded his head and took them from Guy. His arms immediately caved in from the weight as he struggled to keep control of the weights. He struggled but managed to put the weights into the warmers and carefully wrapped them around his ankles. Fantastic. Now let's go. Guy and Lee both began making their trot towards the training ground. Kiba, on the other hand, was having a bit more trouble. He tried as hard as he could, but the best he could do was give a slow jog, even as fast and as strong as he was. He stopped as he noticed they were getting too far ahead of him. He knew he had to do something quick before he lost them. Concentrating, he focused a good chunk of his chakra into his feet and tried again. This time he was able to move just as quickly as he was before and was able to catch up to the other two within a few seconds. They're so dedicated, I doubt they didn't even notice me falling behind. You are doing an impressive job keeping up with us, Kiba. Only 12 more miles until we finally reach the training grounds. Lee cheerfully exclaimed. Kiba's face gave a sudden look of despair. FMLRF. Knock knock knock, I'll get it. Ino quickly made her way to the door as she finished putting her hair back and tying it up. She opened the door to find Sakura about to make another knock before she stopped herself. Sakura? Hey, Ino. Hey. What's up? She asked, motioning her to come in. Oh, nothing really. Actually, it's not nothing. I need some advice. Ino immediately caught a whiff of what Sakura hinted. Boys. Go figure. Mom. Sakura's here. We'll be in my room. Okay, dear. Her mom's voice was heard across the house. They made their way up to Ino's room. Ino pulled a chair from her desk and sat the seat in front of her bed as she sat on the bed, crossing her legs and placing her head on both her hands for support. Okay. Spill it. She said, ready to hear it. So I have a date tonight and I just wanted to know what Ino shrieked, falling back onto her bed, throwing her legs in the air before sitting back to her original position. So who is it, huh? Do I know them? Sakura's eye merely twitched at how quickly she reacted before even hearing who she was talking about. Ugh. Ahem. Yes, you do, as a matter of fact. She said, closing her eyes, merely opening them to find Ino right in her face. So who is it? Don't get so close. Have you ever heard of personal space? Ino backed up, returning her head back to her hands. Sorry. You were saying? Sakura sighed, now completely prepared for how Ino was most likely going to bounce up and down the walls after hearing this. I'm having dinner tonight with Wait. Sakura glared at Ino for cutting her off once again. What? Can I guess? Sakura sighed. Fine. This is gonna take forever. She'll never guess Kiba. Not on her first try anyway. Kiba Inuzuka? She said, inching her face closer to Sakura's. What? Her mind quickly set off, registering the answer. How did you guys were walking by my house last night? Just a guess really. Sakura couldn't believe it. It was right by her house. And she was probably checking you guys out so she could steal him. I ought to knock you into next week, Ino pig. Cha. Inner Sakura said, making a fist. Okay, so it is Kiba. Look, I haven't been out in ages. I need some advice. Ino replied, looking in deep understanding. Well, you came to the right place. She quickly jumping from her bed to her closet, tossing random assortments of clothes onto the bed, making a quick and messy pile. Your advice is clothes? She asked in confusion as the pile finally stopped mounting in size. She returned to the bed, examining Sakura and the pile of clothes. She thought out loud. Now what would look good on you? She quickly ran through the clothes as she came to a stop. Perfect. What is? Ino pulled out 3 articles of clothing before laying them in a separate pile from the mass of clothes she had originally acquired. Among it was a simple black skirt. From the looks of it was about mid-length, most likely hitting right above the knee. The shirt was a plain sleeveless pink shirt complemented by a light red cardinal jacket. Cute but simple. Ino winked at her. He won't be able to keep his hands off you. Ugh, she sighed. It's not like I want to sleep with him or anything. Yes, you do. Yes. You do. Inner Sakura screamed at her. Sakura merely shook her head, trying to cram her perverted inner self back into a corner in an attempt to ignore it. Not now, you don't. Ino giggled. I won't lie to you, dog boy is pretty cute now. I'm surprised he's still single. He's a chunin now, he's strong, fast, decently nice, and Akamaru is just adorable. Hey! Sakura stood up. I'm the one going on the date here, Ino pig. Not you, she finished, sending her glare of daggers to her. Relax, billboard brow, she waved her off. It's not like I'd try and take him off your hands or anything. I'm just trying to motivate ya. Now how about you tell me how this all happened? Sakura sat back down on the chair. I just bumped into him the other day while I was running errands for Lady Tsunade. One thing led to another and he asked me out. And now I'm here. She finished with a smile, remembering Kiba crashing into her outside the ramen shop and nearly shaking the life out of him. What time are you guys going out? Around 8. I still need to do some things before I go home and get ready. Thanks for the outfit, Ino, I owe you. Sakura said before getting up, grabbing the clothes and folding them into her arms. No problem. Tell me how it goes. And how he is. Sakura turned around to glare at Ino, knowing what she meant. Ugh. This girl. Having a successful look on her face, Sakura placed her temporary articles of clothing into her bag before heading towards the Hyuga residence. There was still one more person she needed to talk to. Maybe she'd get lucky and run into Shino as well. Anything helps. When she arrived, she saw Hinata's father training with Niji. Obviously in deep concentration, she merely stood by the entrance and waited for them to rest. Hayashi noticed her presence almost immediately as he caught a punch from Niji. Niji. Let's take a break. All right. He agreed, taking a seat on the porch side. Hello, Sakura. Hayashi greeted the kunoichi. Hello, Lord Hayashi. She said, bowing to him. As she approached him, she asked, Is Hinata here? He nodded. She's here somewhere. I thought she was going to train with Shino, but I never saw him come by. Sakura. Sakura turned to see Hinata along with Shino standing by the entrance. Hinata was giving a surprisingly energetic wave, Shino keeping his usual stance. Hands in his pocket, black sunglasses and his typical white coat. Sakura smiled as Hinata came up to her, in which Sakura greeted her by giving her a hug. They had always been close, especially considering her feelings for Naruto, and Sakura really tried her best to be supportive when she could. What are you doing here? Hinata asked, freeing herself from the hug as she stood in front of her. I actually need to ask you a really big favor. Hinata blushed as she began tapping her 2 index fingers together, unsure of what to say. She nodded as she walked towards the entrance where they could speak in private, where Shino had remained all along. Sakura? What is it tea that you needed from me? Sakura sighed before starting. She was quickly interrupted by Shino. Have a date with Kiba. Tonight. Right? Sakura's eyes widened with surprise. How does he know that? But her surprise quickly exposed itself as a large shade of red streamed across her face. I'm assuming that is why you have come here. To ask for advice on Kiba despite spending years with him in the academy. Shino coldly stated. Sakura gave him kind of an irritated look. He was definitely somebody you had to get used to. Yes, you could say that. He's a good man. Shino quickly stated. Both girls looked at him. It wasn't really like Shino to just toss those kinds of compliments around. Especially when the person he was talking about wasn't anywhere near them. Shino's right. Hinata spoke up. Kiba may be loud and wild and hard to contain. But he's a great person at heart. Sakura sighed. She figured that much. But that's not what she needed to know. What did he like to eat? What did he like to talk about? What did he not like to talk about? For that matter, why am I asking them? Shouldn't I be asking him tonight? The thought came to herself. If you're looking for any advice, Shino started. All I can tell you is that if you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. Do not take this as something casual because he will not. The Inuzukas are very cordial and develop few but powerful attachments to people they court. You being someone he is courting, he will develop a strong bond to you unless you stop it from festering. Shino walked up to her face to face. She could almost see behind his sunglass tint as he spoke to her. Ask yourself if you are ready for that. But do not keep him waiting. He'll be running home to get out of that ridiculous jumpsuit he was in this morning when he ran by my home. That's how I know about tonight. He pushed his glasses up, retreating back to Hinata. Sakura? Yes, Hinata? Sakura replied, still in shock of the mouthful she just received from Shino. Kiba D doesn't like vegetables. She pokes her fingers together as if she has more to say. He may not look it, but he really loves music. He actually plays guitar. Not a lot recently since he's been on so many missions. But he's always talking about these groups from other countries when we're together. The newfound intel made Sakura smile. She never knew he played guitar. She always had a thing for it. And the people who played them. What Shino told her still bothered her. What if after tonight she just wanted to be his friend? If it's as severe as he said it was, she'd break his heart before anything even happened. There had to be a way around it. Maybe he was just pulling her leg? I have to get going. Hinata. I'll see you tomorrow. Shino said before putting his hands in his pockets and walking away from the Hyuga entrance. Just before he left Sakura's side, he stopped. Please do not take any offense to what I say. I'm just trying to look out for a friend. Good luck tonight. He finished before finally setting off. Don't worry about Shino. It may not look like it, but him and Kiba are really close. Hinata said, staring at the ground. Sakura was surprised by that. She didn't think Shino was close to anyone, or the fact that any of the Aburames expressed themselves that openly. Sakura turned to Hinata and smiled at her. Thank you so much, Hinata. This will really help. Hinata hopefully smiled back at her. Sakura? Do you really feel that way about Kiba? She was fairly surprised with how direct she was for a change. A little bit. I just don't know if it's anything more than a simple crush. I won't know until I take the first step. And that'll happen tonight. Hinata nodded before returning to pressing her fingers together again. I should go. I hope everything goes well for you tonight, Sakura. Both Kunoichi waved as they parted ways. Sakura headed down the same road she had come from and checked the time from an overhead clock on a shop. 7:18 p.m. She didn't realize how late it had gotten. The sun was still shining but was clearly already in its descent towards the horizon. Oh crap. She thought. I gotta get home. Wait. 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 Kiba yelled. He was beyond pushed to his limits. He ran over 12 miles in a frilly little green jumpsuit with a large amount of weights attached to his ankle the whole time, had been sparring taijutsu for over 10 hours straight, took a break which consisted of more running, and returned to training more taijutsu, except this time it was a one-on-one against Lee. Is something the matter, Kiba? Lee asked. His right hand was placed behind his back as his left hand faced in front of him, palm open in the shape of a blade, waiting for him to make the first strike. Oh man, I can barely move, Lee. Can't we take a break? Kiba asked, completely out of breath. Akamaru merely sat beside his master, wagging his tail, not saying anything. This is the last part of our training today, Kiba. The faster we finish, the faster we can finish, and the faster the loser can do 2,000 sit-ups. Lee excitedly proclaimed, almost as if he were going to be jealous of whoever lost. Kiba just gave a completely blank stare. Yep. I'm gonna to die. Because you are still new, as my conditions, I will allow you to use your beast mimicry all fours jutsu to increase your strength. After tomorrow you will need to resume our strict no ninjutsu or jinjutsu policy. Kiba sighed. Okay. I think I have a small chance of winning if I can use it. But Jesus, I barely have any chakra left. Okay, I got this. Akamaru. He turned to his companion. Arf. Let's do it. Kiba then throws himself on all fours before making a quick hand sign. Ninja art of beast mimicry. All fours jutsu. Kiba immediately felt a rush of life course through his veins as his aches and the weights holding him down felt nearly weightless. Almost as if nothing held him down anymore. Kiba and Akamaru immediately rushed at Lee as quick as they could. Then, just as they met at face-to-face range, all three vanished. Guy merely watched on the side. He could see where they were going, but he had to pay attention or he would have a hard time finding them again. This kid is something else. He's practically tripled his speed with that jutsu. I just need to break him into the weights on his legs, and when he actually does use it, he'll be as fast as I am. Lee had two things to worry about. First was Kiba, which gathered most of his attention. But he knew not to turn his back on Akamaru. He could be more fierce than Kiba if the situation called for it, and he felt that was now. Kiba appeared ready to punch, but Lee simply sidestepped to the right, dropped to his knees. He attempted to trip Kiba, but he jumped above him at the last second before sending a kick down towards Lee. By the time his foot contacted Lee, had already disappeared. They're evenly matched. Guy thought to himself. This could go on for a while, or at least until Kiba runs out of chakra. But even still, it's pretty damn impressive he is able to match Lee so quickly. I wonder he simply watched as every couple of seconds Lee and Kiba along with Akamaru would appear at one side of the training course, throwing punches so wildly you'd think several people were fighting each other. And just as quickly as they began, they disappeared again. Neither were able to land a hit, but were both beginning to feel the strain as Kiba's chakra began dropping lower and lower the longer the fight went on. All right, you two, that's enough. Guy intervened, catching both Kiba and Lee's punches and placing his foot where Akamaru was going to land a bite. Whoa! That's moving. Kiba thought as Guy coolly appeared in between them. He seemed completely unaffected by the fighting going on, catching the attacks as if they were simple pokes. Kiba, I can tell your chakra is beginning to feel the strain. It will take some extra time to break you into our regular training regiment. But for today, being your first time training with us, you did extraordinarily well. His left hand still in air being blocked by Guy, he let his hand down. Thank you, Sensei. Guy smiled as he lowered his other hand and foot, everyone returning to a calming state. Good training today, boys. You are dismissed. Kiba and Lee gave a nod in response, waved goodbye to each other and began walking away, Akamaru quickly trotting behind Kiba. Kiba looked at the sky. It was beginning to reach dusk and he knew he had to pick up Sakura soon. The weights were still holding him down severely, but he found he was able to keep a steady walking pace. He figured it was somewhere between 6 and 7 given the position of the sun. That being the case, he still had some time to get home and get ready. Sakura happily hummed to herself as she brushed her hair in front of the mirror in her bathroom. She had already dressed up in the outfit Ino gave her, the only thing not given to her being the sandals. After she felt satisfied with her hair, she stepped out into her room, picking up her jacket and putting it on around her. She was glad her and Ino were so close in size. It was easy to swap clothes whenever needed, and Ino always has a store full of clothes in her closet. She wondered at times if that's all her mission pay went to. She walked downstairs to the door. One last time she looked at the mirror to the right of the door above where the family and guests placed their sandals. Forgetting about her headband, she readjusted it to where she usually put it and tightened it before slipping on her sandals and headed to the living room, anxiously anticipating his arrival. I can't wait. Hot water made everything better. At least for Kiba. As he stepped out of the shower, he quickly dried himself off before ruffling his hair beneath his towel. Stepping out into his room, he dressed himself in the clothes he picked out before entering the shower. On the bed were a loose pair of black pants identical to the pants he normally wore, but pleated and a bit more deeper in color, showing signs of less usage. Above the waistline of the pants was a simple dark green t-shirt, an exact shade of green matching his tunic vest. On the arm of the bed to his left laid a brown track jacket. He quickly placed the items on before returning to the bathroom mirror. He had to admit he didn't look half bad. Last but not least, he grabbed his Black Leaf Village headband and strapped it over his damp hair before looking at himself in the mirror one last time. Not bad. Kiba smiled to himself proudly. Stepping out of his room, Akamaru greeted him with a fast wag of his tail and a happy bark at his master's new appearance. Thanks, boy. What do you think? Too much? Not enough? Akamaru simply tilted his head to the side, giving a slight whimper. Yeah, I think it'll be enough. I never really get out much nowadays anyway. Kiba made his way downstairs and looked at the clock. 7:41 p.m. He had to get moving soon if he wanted to be on time. As he walked across the living room, he was stopped by his mother's obvious notice of him getting ready to leave. Going out? He nods. Yeah. I'm picking Sakura up and we're going to have dinner. I'll be home tonight. Be wary of this decision, pup. You know how our clan functions. Get too attached too quickly, and if she isn't interested, you'll only be hurting yourself. Kiba became slightly annoyed at her comment. Come on, Mom. Sakura's not like that. They're all not like that at first. I just want you to be aware of what you are risking out there. And you're leaving Akamaru? Are you sure you should be doing this? Are you sure you're my son? Kiba looked down at Akamaru and rolled his eyes. Akamaru showed no resent towards this. In fact, he was the one who insisted on Kiba going without him. Akamaru wanted me to go alone. You know how I never go by myself anywhere unless he's with me. He wants me to have fun, he said with a smile on his face. Akamaru wagged his tail in response, giving a simple bark to confirm. Tsume nodded, returning to reading something on the table. Be mindful, son. There's still much confusion in her. If you haven't smelled it on her now, you will soon. Kiba simply shrugged in response. I'll be fine. I'll see you tonight. And with that, Kiba pet Akamaru once more before heading out the door. Kuramaru peeked his head up from under the table, awoken by the discussion. Recklessness in that one, the Nin dog observed. Tsume nodded in agreement. Reckless, proud, arrogant. Just like his father. She sighs. And one of the many reasons why I'm glad he's my son. Chapter 4. Sakura was getting bored. She looked at the clock. 7:57 p.m. She knew it technically wasn't 8, but she wanted Kiba to hurry. She kicked her feet back and forth, occasionally clicking her heels together. Where is he? Kiba was keeping a steady pace down the road to Sakura's house. The streets were starting to clear, but there were still some citizens and some ninja making their ways home or even on their way out for the night. It was nice to know the village didn't completely sleep. As he turned a corner, he walked by Ino's flower shop. Thinking of a nice gift to begin the evening, Kiba walked inside, and as the bell rang, that was tripped by the door opening. A surprised Ino perked her head up to greet him. Hey, Kiba. Ino pleasantly greeted him. Kiba gave a simple wave back. Hey Ino, how's it going? Ino already knew why Kiba was here and she was honestly very glad the young Chunin made such an effort to leave a good first impression. Daffodils. They're right there. Ino pointed to the flowers, not giving Kiba a chance to explain his obvious reason for being there. How did you Sakura came by my place today? I know everything about your little outing tonight. She said, giggling as Kiba's face gained a faint shade of red. Ugh, okay. You got me. I'm buying a flower for Sakura. Throw me a bone here, Ino, I gotta mark my territory. Kiba immediately thought about what he just said and how bizarre it sounded to Ino as she started hysterically laughing at his comment. Ha 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 ha. Kiba. You're bad. You know what I meant. Kiba yelled back at Ino behind the counter. She finally calmed down and walked him over to the daffodils. How many would you like? Just one. I think the bouquet will have to come later. He said, grinning, giving a small blush that made Ino smile. She was sure Kiba was a bit of a knucklehead, but he was a good man at heart. Hopefully Sakura saw that. No problem. She finally cut the flower off and took it over to the register, where she took a single flower plastic vase already filled with water and placed the flower in. Thanks, Ino. Seriously. How much? Ino shook her head. It's on the house. So long as you give Sakura a night she won't forget. She winked at him. Kiba knew that meant one of two things. Have a good date and or bed her on the first date. He really liked Sakura though. He couldn't see himself charging into something that physical yet. Giving a nod in response, he took the flower from her. I'll try, Ino. Thanks again. He waved as he walked out the door, making a left and heading towards her house. Finally coming to her home, he could only guess what time it was. Hoping it wasn't too late, he knocked on the door twice before waiting for an answer. Knock knock. Sakura immediately stood up in response to what she had heard. Was that her head? No way, it was the door. And it was Kiba. It had to be. She looked at the clock. 7:59 p.m. She quickly made her way to the door and gave herself one last look in the mirror. Running her hands down her skirt, she gave an exhale before opening the door. Okay. I can do this. She assured herself before opening the door. And there stood Kiba. She was not expecting this from the same Kiba Inuzuka she knew at the academy. He cleaned up very well. His pants were loose, but they kept a nice grip around his legs. His green shirt was the right size and it tugged against his skin. It wasn't hard to see that Kiba had a very well-defined body underneath his shirt. His brown jacket complemented his whole feature. Not too big, but a perfect size. Kiba's jaw nearly dropped at the girl standing in his doorway. What happened? There she stood and completely put his style of clothing to shame. Mostly red and black attire, and it fitted her so well. Her black skirt fell to about the top of her knees. Not too long, but definitely not a miniskirt. Her jacket gave her a more mature look. Light but still red. Red enough for him to be able to make out the difference between that and her undershirt. Unbuttoned jackets always did look better to him. Sakura, you looky here. 1 minute to spare. She smiled at him. Kiba was definitely relieved. He swore he was going to be late by a long shot. You look amazing, Sakura. Kiba bluntly stated. She merely looked down on the ground as the blush began to work through her face. She couldn't deny it, he was straight to the point and she loved that about him. Wait. Loved? She quickly questioned herself but paid no mind to it. Thank you, Kiba. She smiled, coming out of the house and closing the door. Oh. Kiba almost forgot about the daffodil he had in his hand. I got this for you. He hands her the daffodil, watching Sakura's face glow with delight as she noticed it. Oh, thank you, Kiba. She quickly hugged him, wrapping her arms around his chest. Kiba was a bit taken off guard but didn't mind. Not one bit. Her scent was so enveloping. He felt himself falling under even stronger genjutsu that Kurenai could throw at him. But there he was, and the girl he had wanted for who knows how long was hugging him tightly, and the night had only just begun. This is great, he thought to himself as he hugged her back, bringing his arms across the back of her neck before they released each other. Sakura gladly took the flower from his hands. She broke the stem down accordingly, tucking her hair behind her left ear and placing the flower there to keep her hair back. Wow, he thought out loud. Something about the smallest things she did could make her so much more attractive. He didn't even think hot or sexy would do any sort of justice. No. This was something far beyond that. He could smell her comfort. She was comfortable with him, and the scent gave a warmer glow to it after she hugged him. What's going on? He thought. HM? She asked. Oh, nothing. Are you ready to go? He asked, giving a big grin, realizing he had been caught. She nodded. Kiba extended his arm as a gesture for them to go. She blushed at the sight of any of her friends seeing Kiba walking arm in arm with her walking down the street. But then again she figured after tonight Ino would have told everybody in the whole land of fire, so what difference would it make? She happily took her right arm and laced it in with his left, and they were off. Kiba's heart was on a high like he had never experienced before. Her arm in his, her by his side, it was such a powerful feeling. He felt like he could take on the whole world, and they weren't even a couple yet. He smirked to himself, making it physical as it grew, making it very obvious to Sakura, who only stared at him. Kiba? He immediately broke from his daze as he looked over to her. Yeah. What's got you so happy all of a sudden? She smiled at him. What do you think? He smiled back at her. He knew she caught on when she rested her head on his shoulder, her blush hard to see but was noticeable. So where are we going? She asked. I have a place in mind. He replied, still staring forward. A few minutes later they came to a sushi restaurant. Kiba stopped them right as they passed the entrance. Sakura recognized the place. It was easily one of the most, if not the most expensive place in the village. Kiba, we don't sure we do. Kiba interrupted her before giving a spontaneous kiss on her head, burying his lips into her hair. The smell was so intense to his nose. It was like soaking in a hot spring after a hard day of training. He thought that if there was ever a war, all he would need to do to survive is bring a piece of her with him. If he ever got hurt, he could just smell it to remind him she'll be with him. That alone would suffice for any medical treatment. Sakura could only smile at how much of a gentleman Kiba was being. After all this time, she would have never guessed. The kiss on her head was so warm and sincere. It wasn't a cheap attempt to buy her food and get her into bed. It was something that said, hey, I like you. Won't you stay a while? As they walked in, they were quickly seated at a large table. In front of them was a large flat iron. Sakura remembered this place was known for having dinner made right in front of the customer by a professional chef. This place is great. Me and the rest of the team took Kurenai-sensei out here to celebrate her pregnancy. She really liked it. He started laughing. And I've never seen Shino so frightened for his beetles before. You should have seen it. Whenever the chef would bring his knife down, the heat he claimed was so hot it made the beetles start to dehydrate. He tried pulling off his best Shino impersonation. Can you believe that? He started laughing again as the chef approached. The thought of Shino panicking made her grin. Shino never expressed anything really. To see him obsessing over the safety of something must have been something pretty rare and equally hilarious. Right after they ordered, Sakura was completely tranced by how the chef prepared everything. He was so fast and precise too. His loud exclamations sometimes frightened her, but Kiba thought it was a riot. He looked like a kid seeing his first show. But it was a nice thing to see that he wasn't uptight. He really enjoyed his time out. After they finished eating, they simply sat in their seats talking for an unknown amount of time as customers slowly left the restaurant. It was getting late, but customers were still coming in, so they knew they still had time. So Ino really guessed my name in one try? Kiba asked with an amusing chuckle behind it. Sakura nodded. Yep. We walked by her house when you were dropping me off. Ugh. She's so nosy. Kiba just watched her tell her more and more about the events leading up. Even more shockingly about how Shino gave her some advice. If you give a mouse a cookie, huh? I haven't heard that since my mom read me the book when I was just a little kid. Sakura giggled at Kiba's question before nodding. Do you have to work tomorrow? Kiba asked abruptly. No, I don't. Why? Do you want to go somewhere else? She smiled before nodding her head. She had no idea where they were going to go, but she liked surprises. And Kiba gave a very safe aura about him. Like a big dog who would always be by your side. Stepping out into the night, the breeze caught them off guard. Sakura's arms swelled with goosebumps as she rubbed them together. Kiba, without thinking, took his jacket off and surprised her by placing it around her shoulders. She looked up at him only to give a heartfelt smile back to him as her body warmed up almost instantly. It was pretty big on her, but not too much. Joining arm in arm again, they made towards the monument of the Hokages. Taking a good look at the quickest way there, Kiba took Sakura up a long flight of stairs as they made their way to the top of the monument. Sakura's shortness of breath didn't go unnoticed as she stopped more than once to catch her breath. Kiba decided it was time to take it up another level, so to her surprise he simply scooped her up in his arms. Going up? He smirked. She only blushed at his action. How did I never notice him before? She nods. Up please. Kiba smiled down at her as he carried her up the next 2 flights of stairs. Finally reaching the top, he looked at her. Do you trust me? Sakura was kind of startled by this. What does that have to do with anything? She slowly nodded. Kiba merely walked behind her and placed his hands around her eyes. Don't worry, he whispered in her ear. I would never let anything happen to you. He smiled once more. Close your eyes, okay? She complied and shut her eyes. She felt Kiba's hands leave her face and heard them making a hand sign. Hold on, he said. Suddenly Sakura was spinning. Fast. And she was no longer on the ground. She was flying. All she could hear before taking off was fong over fong. Before her hearing was completely covered in a trance of whirlwinds. Finally it stopped. She opened her eyes out of instinct but fell on her due to the dizziness she had just endured. Behind her was Kiba giving a victorious grin. Kiba. She got up immediately, regaining her bearings. Getting right in his face, fist ready, her only question was, why did you do that? Kiba simply sat down and laid his hands behind his back. He leaned back and enjoyed the sky. Look at where we are. Sakura looked down but saw nothing. She looked at Kiba, who pointed to the left, then the right. Looking to the left, she saw the head of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. When she glanced right, she saw the head of the 2nd Hokage, Tobirama Senju. Her eyes opened as she realized she was standing on top of the head of the 3rd Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi. All the memories of him when they were younger came flashing back. Out of all the Hokages, many people considered the 3rd to be the greatest of them all, even though people who saw the 4th would say otherwise. The 3rd Hokage. Kiba nodded. Sakura sat down next to him, holding onto his coat only wrapped around her shoulders with no literal attachment to her. She scooted closer to Kiba, who just noticed and smiled. I come up here and think sometimes. Me and Akamaru. His gaze still fixed on the sky. From here you feel like you can see everything. Like the Hokages are always watching over us. Sakura was taken back by what he was saying. She had no idea how spiritual he was. Especially since she never thought of it that way. Why is he your favorite? Kiba gave a weak laugh. Honestly, it's kind of a lame reason. Sakura nudged him. No, it isn't. Come on. Kiba sighed. My father left when I was young. Real young, since before I even got Akamaru. My mom always said she scared him anyway, but I just don't believe it. Sarutobi, he was like a father figure to me. To the whole village. He not only served his time, but he happily gave his position to Minato. And after he died, he took his position back for another 12 years. And if that isn't enough, he pointed to the right. Sakura followed his finger over to the stone heads of the first and second. He was taught by both of them. And when Orochimaru brought them both back in his old age, he not only defeated both of them but he crippled Orochimaru in the process. He sighed. He's the best in my book because of that. The village was his family. He came back and took charge even in his weaker state. And he still gave that Sannin hell. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had no idea Kiba knew this much about the village's history. And about that battle. She was so enveloped in his speech about it she never noticed the tears falling from his face. He's the best type of father anyone could ask for. He did so much for me without even realizing it. But his voice wasn't cracked or breaking. He was happy. The lack of father in his life had to have been heavy. She was just glad at least the third did what he could for the time being. Kiba, she placed her hand on his. He looked over at her and smiled. The distance between their faces could only be measured by millimeters at best. Yet he didn't lean in to kiss her. Just the look on her face, the sincere look of approval, made him happier every second of looking at her. "What do you think?" he asked. "Kiss him." "Why are you waiting?" "The third won't mind." Inner Sakura screeched. She smiled back at him. "I would have to say the same thing too." Finishing her sentence with a nod. Kiba returned his look to the stars. To his left, one star was seen shooting across to his right towards the moon. "Hey!" Sakura pointed. "A shooting star." Kiba nodded. "Guess you better make your wish then." "Guess I should too." Both of their voices grew silent as they thought of their wish. In the specific order goes Sakura then Kiba. Despite their saying the exact same thing, that's the best way to describe it, I think. "I wish that I can protect everyone I love and keep him in my heart and in my life, so that once I can keep her safe, so that once I can keep him safe, we can all find peace." Both of them opened their eyes almost simultaneously. "So?" Kiba asked. "Do you think you'll get what you wished for?" Sakura shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know. I hope I do." "Me too," he replied. He stood up top the third's monument and watched down at the village. Sakura only looked at him, still sitting down. The lights festering from his body were surreal. She admitted he was attractive, but now with the way he stood he looked like an angel. "I have to train early tomorrow," Kiba said, still staring down into the village. "I should get you home. I'm sure your folks won't want you staying out too late." Sakura stood up and walked next to him. Her head leaned against his right arm as they both enjoyed the view of the city below. It was so peaceful. So easy to get lost in your thoughts. And this side of Kiba she had never seen before. It was so not like him. Long talks, total gentleman, surreal insight, and his sentimental bond with the third was something she never saw coming. He was different. "You ready?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, preparing for him to use his jutsu again. "Okay. Here we go." He, instead of making hand size, scoops her up and jumps off the monument of the third. Sakura watched as they slowly descended into the village. It was nothing like she had ever seen before. As if the view from the mountain was something, the peaceful breeze that slowly trickled across her face made her feel so alive. Kiba had the calmest expression on his face. And rightfully so. The girl he had been crazy about for years was right in his arms, practically in flight with him, and she was comfortable. She never once asked to go home. She was never creeped out, offended, nothing was awkward. Maybe he just waited too long. Maybe if he had just done this sooner it could have saved a lot of time. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. They finally reached the ground as Kiba crouched down to brace the fall. He stood up, letting go of his left arm as Sakura dropped down, finally touching the ground. "Well, I tried to make an exact landing in front of your house," he scratched the back of his head. They were literally one door down from her home. "But I guess it's the thought that counts, right?" He giggled, scratching the back of his head. She smiled back at him. "The thought always counts." She took his jacket off and handed it back to him. "I guess this is it for right now, huh?" Kiba asked. Only for right now. Sakura replied. As she made her way to the door, she unlocked it, and just before she opened it she felt her arm being grabbed. Sakura Kiba's pull was more than welcomed. Sakura not only gave in but she approached him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and before Kiba could so much as echo another word they kissed. Kiba wasn't even planning on kissing her. He was just going to say goodnight and walk off and consider it mission accomplished. But this feeling. His face, his body, it was on fire. Like someone had just lit him up, but it didn't bother him. He didn't need anything at that point. Forgetting about everything else around him, he brought her in closer as they shared the kiss together. His left arm wrapping around her waist while his right hand gently cupped the back of her head. It was the greatest feeling either of them had experienced. Fast, spontaneous, and most of all real. There was no mistaking for any of their feelings anymore. This kiss. Their kiss. It was love. Sakura finally broke away before she had to gasp for air. Her arms were still wrapped around his neck. Her hands then trailed down his chest before branching to his arms and eventually reaching his hands. "Good night, Kiba," she said, sliding her hands onto his before letting go and walking inside and closing the door. "Yeah." Kiba knew she couldn't hear him. He didn't care. The shock was better than anything he had ever anticipated for the aftermath. The moment kept replaying over and over. Did it really happen? Did I just? He touched his lips. The scent was very clear. It was hers. And they had very much so just kissed. Kiba quite possibly gave himself the biggest grin as he gave a small wave to the door. "Good night, Sakura." And with that, Kiba was on his way home. Rushing home, he had never felt more alive in his life. Leaping from roof to roof, her scent stayed with his. Mixing together, giving him a sense of relief, purpose, and the feeling of companionship he had been searching for ever since he decided he wanted to make her his. Finally reaching his home, he landed on the roof. He knew it was late. He knew his mother would be mad at him for coming in so late. He didn't care. He was in love and he was gonna let the whole world know. Even the Akatsuki. Even Orochimaru. Even the third, his sentimental father figure. He tapped on his window to find a sleeping Akamaru on his bed. Tapping again, he finally got his best friend's attention. Akamaru barked quietly as he pawed at the latch to unlock the window. Kiba swept in and quickly closed the window and locked it. He didn't even take any of his clothes off. Especially the jacket. He knew he was going to sleep in it tonight, no ifs, ands, or buts. Climbing under the sheets, Akamaru laid beside him. Wondering what happened, he pawed his master's chest. "Akamaru," he sighed happily before petting him. "I'm in love." Chapter 5. The weeks carried on as normal. Kiba eagerly woke up to greet every day as he spent the entirety of it training with Guy and Lee again. Afterwards, he would always head off to spend a few hours with Sakura. She had suggested a picnic for today, and Kiba jumped at the idea of getting out in the fields for the sake of not training under excessive conditions. He could, however, feel his speed skyrocket after every day. Training with Guy and Lee has made him considerably more capable mentally and especially physically. Added into the fact that he had permission to dock his lips with Sakura's made him feel luckier and more confident every moment he thought about it. One thing wasn't sure with Kiba though. Were they a couple? It sure seemed like it. Heck, whenever they would walk by others together, people always gave them surprised looks. When Naruto finally came back, he was in total shock that the two had gotten so close. Jiraiya merely smiled at the idea of the newer generation beginning to lay its roots into the village. As Kiba made his way towards the Hokage mansion, he kept his eyes out for Sakura. He knew she was still working with her today, but he always liked showing up early. Even with 1 minute to spare. Early is early after all. Finally reaching the door, he gave a couple of simple knocks before hearing Tsunade grant him freedom to enter. "Lady Tsunade." Kiba bowed. "Hello, Kiba," she said, keeping her face behind her hands, which were standing up. "If you're looking for Sakura, she's out on a mission." Kiba quirked his eyebrow at the statement. "I thought we had plans today." I see. Where did she go? We originally had plans today, so she left a note for me to give you. Tsume reached under a layer of paperwork before reaching him a folded piece of paper. Kiba opened the note to find it fairly filled up. He quickly read through it. Kiba, I'm so sorry about not being able to make it today. We just got a mission sent out for the team today. The Akatsuki got Gaara. We're heading for the sand village right after I finish this. I'm scared. But after spending so much time with you lately, I don't feel nearly as afraid. I only wish I had time to put in a request to have you come with us. Anyway, I'll be home before you know it. It's about 3 days traveling, but with Naruto as riled up as he is, we may make it back sooner than you'd think. See you soon. Love, Sakura. Kiba gave only an acknowledging nod as he took the note and placed it in his vest pocket. I know what you're thinking, Kiba. Don't. Tsunade stared at him. Kiba's face tensed up. He wanted to find her. He knew she had gotten stronger, much stronger. But what if something happened to her and he couldn't stop it? He just needed to know by his own eyes that she was all right. Yes, Lady Tsunade. You're a Chunin now. You have to be above these emotionally driven instincts. The Akatsuki will only come after the Jinchuriki. What? Kiba shouted. You know Kakashi-sensei and Sakura won't just roll out the goddamn red carpet for them to take Naruto. They're walking around with bait. Arf. Akamaru barked in agreement. If you two would let me finish, Tsunade glared at him. You would know that I would not send them out so hastily. Naruto has an emotional attachment with Gaara. Kakashi and Sakura know how to control him, and you're forgetting who trained Kakashi. The fourth Hokage. And don't forget who trained Sakura all this time. And who trained you? He smiled. Tsunade gave a humble smile. Then you will understand there is nothing to worry about. Kiba nodded as he began heading for the door. One more thing, Kiba. Ma'am? Sakura has been slower in finishing her work. Sometimes she shows up late tired and has a hard time concentrating. Kiba gulped. I'm sorry, Lady Tsunade. I'll be sure to. She's happy. Keep doing whatever it is you're doing. She finished. She was telling the truth. Sakura's head would be so high up in the clouds sometimes she would sometimes stop working completely. He only gave a small smile back. Yeah. I will. Finally reaching the door, he left and headed back home. Kiba and Akamaru took a steady pace home. They weren't in a hurry. Taking a stroll past Ichiraku's, he passed by a small patch of trees. Under the center tree laid Shikamaru, simply gazing at the clouds without a care in the world. He had nothing else to do, so Kiba walked over hoping to engage in some kind of conversation. Hey Shikamaru. Kiba greeted, standing over him. Hey Kiba. Shikamaru replied, keeping his gaze fixed into the sky. What's up? Shikamaru shrugged his shoulders. We were supposed to be training today. But Asuma-sensei had to take Kurenai-sensei to the doctor for a checkup on the baby. So we've all just sort of strayed away today. It's been a real drag. Kiba sat down at the trunk next to Shikamaru. The man really did have no cares in the world. Even after him and Temari made themselves known as a couple. Well, that was mostly her. He still never understood why a lazy carefree man like him would get with such a spunky free spirit like Temari. It was a total opposite for matches. Yeah. I know what you mean. Sakura took off to the sand village. The Akatsuki captured the Kazekage. Shikamaru nodded, apparently already knowing. Yeah. Temari's been really upset. She sent me a message saying she's going to be working on the borders in case a neighboring village sees a weak spot and tries to attack. What? Shouldn't she be looking for her brother? He shrugged his shoulders. That's what I said. But you know the higher-ups. They're a real pain. She's just been real upset, so when she gets him back I'm planning on taking her out when comes here. They both fell into a silence. Akamaru pawed the ground in between them, making a small bed before laying at the feet of both the Chunin. He could see why Shikamaru did this. It was so relaxing. Just watching the world go by. Not worrying about what came next. He wondered if Sakura was watching the sky like he was. Maybe the clouds he saw would reach her and she would see them too. So Shikamaru broke the silence. How's it going with Sakura? Kiba sighed. Honestly, Shikamaru, I don't know. He glanced over to him. How do you figure? Well, we're not really together. It's like we are, but I don't know, man. Shikamaru hummed to himself before stopping. Let's see if I have the answer for you. Kiba. Do you like shogi? Kiba looked over to Shikamaru, who was staring right at him. The hell? Yeah, I guess. I know how to play, but I wouldn't call myself good. Shikamaru sat up before reaching his feet. Let's head back to Asuma-sensei's place. He'll be there soon. There's something I want to show you. He finished before taking off. Kiba quickly reached his exhausted feet before following behind Akamaru, trailing closely. Show me something? With shogi? The two Chunin finally reached Asuma's home to find him and Kurenai relaxing on a bench swing, enjoying the view. They really looked happy, knowing soon they would be able to start a family. Asuma had hoped this day would come before his father passed away, but he knew the third would have his ways of finding out. Sarutobis were like that. Even in death. Asuma stood up before waving the two rookies over. Shikamaru. Kiba. Both waved over. Shikamaru's hand showing obviously less energy than Kiba's. What brings you boys out here? Asuma asked, sitting back down and wrapping his arm around Kurenai. Shikamaru took his hands out of his pocket before clearing his throat. Kiba's got girl problems, so I wanted to show him something. It's a real drag, so would you mind if we use your shogi board? Kiba glared at Shikamaru. I don't have girl problems. Kurenai and Asuma laughed at how quickly Kiba's temper rose. Sure. Why don't you guys play it out here? It's a beautiful day. Asuma suggested. Kurenai nodded in agreement with him. Shikamaru shrugged his shoulders. Sure. Wait here, Kiba, I'll go get the board. He left before waiting for a response. Kiba took a leaning stance next to Kurenai as he watched the road in front. Asuma's home wasn't too big, but it was cozy and quiet. So how did it go, sensei? Kurenai looked up at Kiba. The baby looks very healthy. We won't know if it will be a boy or girl for another few months. I'm sorry our missions have been slowed so much. But I heard about your training with Guy. How is it going? Kiba sighed, rubbing his eyes. Honestly, Kurenai-sensei, I don't know how that man can push himself so hard. Him and Lee push me so hard I feel like it never gets easier. Just when I finally do something right the first time, I'm immediately stacked with something heavier. Asuma smiled. Do you feel like you are making progress though, Kiba? That's the real thing you should be observing. Yeah, Asuma-sensei, I feel several times better than what I did before I started training. I just feel like sometimes I need a break. I can only do so much. Even Akamaru has a hard time keeping up, and he's probably got twice as much energy as I do. Arf. Arf. That's so not true. What did he say? Asuma asked. He said I'm dead weight after the first 2 hours of training. Glaring at his companion, who only wagged his tail in acknowledgement. Kurenai and Asuma laughed at that. They had no idea Akamaru was so opinionated, especially in a few barks. Kiba, after being captain of your team for as long as I have been, I can honestly say you have almost as much energy as Naruto. You really do have great potential, and it's good to be pushed the way you are. Keep training. Kurenai's words really hit Kiba home. She was like a loving mother with genjutsu like you've never seen before. She looked cold, but she was someone who only wanted the best for her students. If it wasn't for her, Hinata might have always been stuck in her shyness and lack in confidence forever. And Shino became a much more sociable person because of her branching them into two-man groups so often. But he still had his moments. So Kiba Asuma grabbed his attention. Kurenai here tells me you and Sakura have grown rather fond of each other. Kiba shrugged his shoulders. Yeah. We have. But it's complicated. Asuma and Kurenai sighed at his response. Complications at 16? No, they both thought sarcastically. Well? Why don't you tell us about it? Kurenai inquired, touching his hand to comfort him. Honestly, Sensei, I'm in love. I know I am. But nothing about us is even official. He took a seat on the wall next to the bench swing, pressing his back against the wall for support. Akamaru came up to him and sat next to him. It's like we share everything a couple would, but it's not. Well, we're just not technically a couple, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Don't worry. We'll figure it out. Kiba turned to his right to see Shikamaru holding a shogi board and a bag containing the pieces together. He set the board down in front of where Kiba was sitting and began setting the pieces up. As the two young chunin began their game, the elder couple carefully observed their game. Asuma was showing some impressiveness in how well Kiba was able to set up a defensive position against Shikamaru's offense that usually beats him. The game dragged on for quite some time. Kiba rarely let his pieces cross out of their territory. Finally, Shikamaru was about to make his move. I never thought someone like you would play like this. Kiba looked up, puzzled. What do you mean? You're usually really energetic. A lot like Naruto. Eager and willing to get your hands dirty. But here you're completely different. You're conservative and willing to hold yourself back to protect your other pieces. Kiba looked down. He was right on the money. It really wasn't like him at all to play defense. Even when he was fighting against Sakon and Yukon, he knew he was outclassed, but he still kept fighting. I don't know. He thought out loud. I guess I was just never really prone on making the first move. I wanted to see what you would do first. There's your answer, Kiba. You just answered your own problem for yourself. Kiba and Akamaru both glanced at Shikamaru in total confusion. I did what? You've been playing on the defense with Sakura. I never play offense. To be honest, I'm awful at it. I play the way you do. Slow, conservatively, and anticipate a weak spot before I go in. As he finished his sentence, Shikamaru leaped over Kiba's pieces and captured his king, ending the game. You need to stop being on the defense. I promise you you'll get your answers if you just take a step forward. That's what this game was all about. You're comfortable where you're at, but you know you want to finish it off. Problem is you're playing it safe. At this point you can't really think about safe when you're already in the stage you're in. Kiba couldn't believe Shikamaru was reading him like that. He was totally right. He wasn't being nearly aggressive enough. They hadn't kissed since that first night they did. They hardly spoke of it, period. He knew she wasn't uncomfortable about it or around him because they still talked every day afterwards. You need to decide what you're going to do, Asuma began. You're in a good spot by the sounds of it, but you need to finish it. Don't wait and fall back into the friend zone. Let me tell you, it's nothing fun. I learned that growing up. But I finally learned to take the step forward when it counted. And I couldn't be happier because of it. Kurenai smiled as she laid back into his shoulder. Asuma's right, Kiba. This way, even if it doesn't work, you at least know. Wouldn't you rather know now instead of spend forever and wonder? Kiba nodded with an enlightened smile on his face. Yeah. You guys are all right. I guess I never thought of it that way. Standing up, he made his way to the porch. Thanks, you guys, it really helped. I'm gonna head home now. It's almost time for dinner. They all exchanged their goodbyes as Kiba and Akamaru began their walk home. He really took in what they said. He knew Sakura wasn't going to lead him on, but he had to make his feelings known. Really put the chips on the table. He figured he had a few days until she came back, so he had plenty of time to get ready. And so days passed and passed. His training had come to him training alone since Team Guy went off to back up Team Kakashi. He was worried about Sakura, but now he wasn't worried too much since they were getting some help. He woke up around the time he was becoming accustomed to. 4:30 was normally the time he would go to sleep if he had nothing to do the next day. Now he was used to the running and the training. Only this time he felt free of using the jumpsuit. Merely attaching the weights to his socks, it proved equally as successful and much more comfortable. The thought crossed his mind more than once to just run through the gate and head towards the sand village. He knew he could make it. It'd be easy. But he knew if Guy was going with his whole team, they could handle whatever the Akatsuki had in store for them. His thoughts distracted him so much he failed to see the bright red fire hydrant until the last moment when he buckled his knee right into the hose nozzle. Damn it! He yelled, kneeling on his knees. He lifted his hurt knee to look at it. He had a feeling shorts might not have been such a good idea, and the weights looked like giant masses on his legs. People might have gotten the wrong idea if they saw him from a distance. Picking himself up, Akamaru stopped next to him and licked his master for support. Thanks, Akamaru. But I think we better head back. I can't keep running with this knee. He stood up and in defeat of his morning run rode Akamaru home. As he unlocked the door to enter, he caught his mother eating by herself. Looking over at him, she waved him over. Mom? Back so soon? Team Guy had a mission. They went to go back up Team Kakashi. I went to go train myself, but I hit my knee before I was even halfway done. I see. She replies before placing her hand across the table to the chair in front of him. Are you hungry, son? Kiba nodded before walking over to the fridge. Pulling out a container of milk and some fruit, he reached over the top of the fridge for some cereal. Finally assembling the necessary items he would need to place his food, and he sat down across from his mother. She had already finished eating, but it was nice to spend time together since they didn't get to too much within the past few months. You never told me about your little date with the kunoichi. Began the conversation. Kiba, with a mouthful of fruit, stared up at his mom, thinking of what to say before swallowing his food. Well, don't be scared, pup. I can smell your nervousness. I'm just curious as to how much you enjoyed her company. She was right, he didn't smell any aggressiveness about her. Guess I'm in the clear then. Phew. It was great. Really, it was. Did you mark her? MOM? Kiba spat as some of his cantaloupe flew into the cereal. You sure seemed set on it before you went out. I just wanted to make sure if anything did happen or not. He cleared his throat after finishing another spoonful of cereal. We just kissed. No big deal. Tsume quirked her eyebrow in disbelief. She didn't even need her sense of smell to pick up that Kiba was trying to play it off. He was very much attached already and was showing signs of developing instincts to mark her as his mate. Why are you so afraid, son? So yeah, that's all we did. Ate some dinner, watched some stars, and ended pretty well. Yep. And we still talk, so I'd say it was a good experience. Kiba. What, Mom? Do you love this girl? I don't even need to smell it on you that you're hiding your feelings from me. I'm not trying to get the feelings out of you. I'm your mother. I like to know how my son is doing. She smiled at him. It wasn't something he was used to. His mom was always tough, strict, and downright scary sometimes. When she showed any affection, he felt like he was either in a genjutsu or she was just going to slap him for being gullible. But she wasn't abusive. Just expected a lot. He sighed and simply took a few more spoonfuls of cereal, attempting to fill his mouth up so he wouldn't have to answer. Arf. Akamaru spoke for his master. Thank you, Akamaru. Tsume smiled. Some best friend. Kiba thought. After swallowing his cereal, he finally said it himself. Yeah. I love her. More than that. I'm in love with her. Even in the academy, I always thought she was a total knockout. But when Sasuke was there, it's like every other guy never existed. Like I never existed, so I just forgot about it. But when he left, I felt like my window opened. Just a little bit. So I tried, but it was just a simple hi here and hey there. Finally finished with his food, he set his dishes away in the sink. He reached for a dog bowl and opened the cabinet to find a fairly new bag of dog food. Taking a few handfuls, he filled up Akamaru's bowl before sitting back down and continuing. But literally all I had to do was ask. Turning his attention to Akamaru, he set the bowl down on the floor next to the chair. It makes me wonder, this entire time did she feel something to me? And if she did, why didn't she say anything? He sighed to himself as he leaned back in his chair. Careful with the chair, pup. Remembering how weak the chairs were, he returned back down flat. Sorry, Mom. He cleared his throat. Anyway, that's the situation. When I felt like I was totally invisible, I believed it. And when I decided to up and try, it just fell together. Is it too good to be true? After we kissed that night, we hadn't done something quite like that since. We still talked and hung out when we weren't busy, but it just feels like I'm drifting in the wrong direction now. I don't want to be a friend. Without realizing, Tsume was behind her son, hugging him from behind. Kiba, I know you will find the answers when she comes home. You're my son. I know you'll be able to find out what you need to do. This girl I'm not so sure about. Maybe you can prove me wrong. But if you choose once. You know our most sacred rule within the Inuzuka clan. He nodded. Mate once. For only one. Thanks, Mom. He smiled up at his mother, still holding him in embrace. She smiled back as she kissed the top of his head. Why don't you write her a letter? The light bulb went off in his head. Of course. He thought. She left me a note. I could send it off as soon as I'm done. He quickly ran upstairs with Akamaru hot on his trail the second he saw his master spring up. Thanks, Mom. Was all Tsume heard as it faintly made its way from the second story. Scene change, Kiba quickly reached through the drawers in his desk, frantically searching for a piece of paper. Upon finally finding one, he stopped as he thought about what he said and began writing. Arf. Haha. Okay, Akamaru, what do you want me to tell her, you said? Arf. Arf. No problem. He said in response as he wrote down his best friend's response. Finishing his note, he rolled it up in a scroll container before heading downstairs. The Inuzuka compound was pretty close to where the messenger bird station was. Another ninja greeted him as he handed his note over. Where's it heading? I'm not sure. I'm looking to find Sakura Haruno. I think she's in the hidden sand, but she might not be there yet. Or she could have already left. Don't worry. We'll find her. Kiba nodded as he dropped some money into the man's hands and watched him hand the note over to the bird. He slipped it under its talon as he released it from its cage. He walked over to the window and let the bird free as it headed in the direction towards the sand. Sakura, hope this finds you. Chapter 6. It was one of the toughest fights she's ever had to fight in her entire life. But the information she gained was invaluable. Sasori was probably the craziest, most maniacal, cold-hearted, ruthless ninja she's ever fought against. But he was a man of his word. Orochimaru was going to be waiting for them, like it or not. After celebrating Gaara's revival and sending their goodbyes to Lady Chiyo's grave, the near-complete Team 7 and Team Guy made their way back from the sand to the leaf. Nearing the border, a single bird appeared from the horizon, heading directly for them. Hey! Naruto points up ahead. Is that bird coming right for us? Kakashi nodded. It's a messenger. Nothing to worry about. The bird finally made its way to right in front of Sakura's face. It kept fluttering in front of her before she finally reached for the note under its talon. For me? She asked, taking the note. Well, I guess we can rest for a few minutes so Sakura can read her love note from Kiba. Kakashi humorously stated as Guy set him to a tree. They were right at the border between where the sand and forest began to separate. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura pouted, not even trying to hide the red in her face. It might not even be Kiba. What if it's the Hokage or one of the other teams, or it's from Kiba? Niji interrupted, turning his Byakugan off. You'll see it when you open it. Annoyed from everybody watching her, Sakura quickly ducked behind a tree in an attempt to gain some privacy as she opened up the note. Sakura, don't worry about the picnic. There's always next time. I can't say I've ever really written a letter for fun that many times before, but I'm trying here. Akatsuki, bad news. I hope everything goes okay with Gaara, and I hope you're okay. Oh. Today I ran into Shikamaru. We hung out at Asuma Sensei's place for a while. I played shogi with Shikamaru and yeah, I lost, but I learned something. I'll explain more when you get back. After that night we haven't really tried to make anything of it. I don't know if that's you or me or heck both of us. I just need to know because it's been eating away at me. To be honest, I think about it and you all the time. Akamaru wanted me to tell you he hopes you're doing well. He also wants to know when the next time he'll see you is. I'm not kidding. He asked me right as I was finishing, but since he still had me going I figured I could put in some more. I mean, who knows how long this will take to get to you. I just want you to know that I think about you all the time. I miss you. But I know it's your duty and it'll be mine whenever I'm out and you're not. And I guess I have one more other thing too since I'm writing. That kiss. It meant so much more to me than just my first time kissing someone. It was my first time kissing you. Man, I bet you think I'm some kind of lame for telling you this in a letter instead of face to face. But truth be told, some friendly words of advice told me I had to do this now. And since you're not here right now, I had to go with this. I love you, Sakura. In a sense, I think I always have. See, when we were at the academy I never really talked to you, but I really liked you. I thought you were pretty and smart, and whenever you and Ino would fight I thought it was hilarious. Me and Akamaru always took bets to see how long Ino would last, and normally I'd lose. He was always so realistic. Anyway, when you were on about Sasuke, I just felt invisible. I pretty much lost all my motivation to even try. And I had to convince myself that I didn't care when in reality I was jealous of the guy who you were crazy about when he didn't even really do anything about it. But when he left it all came rushing back. My head kept saying go. What are you waiting for? But I was convinced there was nothing there. Then well, one thing led to another, and here I am writing you a really sappy love letter that Naruto is probably going to snatch and read. Hey Naruto. Stop slowing the teen down. If I was with you guys we would have been back in half the time. And stop reading this letter. I don't recall sending out the pigeon to see you. Anyway, to finish it off, I just want to know where we are. For a while I felt like I was just falling into the friend zone. I don't know about you and I probably think I'm a bit of a doofus for being this forward, but I want to be more than that. You don't have to answer me right now, I imagine it's kind of a big drop on you. But let's talk about it when you get back, okay? Have a good trip home. Love, Kiba and Akamaru. The rest of the two teams only watched as Sakura's head fell back onto the tree as she sighed out loud. Oh Kiba, a young love. It sure is something else, isn't it, Kakashi? Guy asked, still carrying him on his back. The awkward piggyback riding position slowly became more bearable to the copycat ninja. Didn't mean he'd want to be seen in public with it though. Sure is. He said, a happy response. Well? Naruto started. What did he say? Come on, let me see. Naruto. Sakura glared at him. You know what? Read it. I want you to see what Kiba said about you. Naruto looked sad. What he said about me? Sakura simply handed the note to Naruto as he quickly jotted through all the romantic and mushy details to find what he said. What? Damn you, Kiba. How did he know? Not realizing Sakura had already begun writing her letter back, Naruto quickly ran over and snatched the note from her. Naruto. Give that back. Sakura chased after him. Hold on. I want to say something to him. Naruto said, running up a tree for safety. Hey! Tintin thought out loud. Why don't we all write him back? No. How about we don't? He's mine. Inner Sakura jealously bursted out. Sakura sighed as she handed Naruto the pencil she was using to write with. Slowly each team member took a small amount of time writing back to Kiba before coming to Guy and then back to Sakura. Finally finishing responses from everybody, Sakura took the note back and began writing the last part of it before sealing it up and placing it back into the talon of the bird, finally sending it off. All right you guys, let's move it. Guy excitedly ordered as they began their trip back. Scene change, it's been a day since Kiba sent his letter off. He was hoping it would make it to Sakura in time or just make it to her period. It was boring. Hinata was working with Kurenai-sensei while Shino was on a mission with his dad. With everyone gone, it seemed like all he did after he trained by himself was sit in his room and toss an old ball he used to play with Akamaru with up to the ceiling and catch it again. He sighed. There's gotta be something to do. He sat up. Akamaru perked up at him, waiting to see what his plans were. Turning around, he looked over to see a dusty guitar sitting in the corner next to the door of his closet. Hey! He stood up, excited. I haven't jammed out in a long time. That's what I'll do. Picking up his guitar, he strummed it. The Stratocaster was awfully out of tune. Ruffling through a large bag, he found his tuner, a cable, and a case of picks. He looked at his guitar while dusting it off. It was your basic Fender Stratocaster Sunburst finish and American standard. It showed signs of play but nothing worn away. The cherrywood neck still carried small clumps of dust in between frets, but he didn't let it bother him. He remembered how he had to beg his mom to get the American version, and in the end he still had to pay for half of it. While tuning it, he remembered a new CD he bought a few weeks ago he hadn't really listened to much. He looked through the small plastic bag to find the case. August Burns' Red Constellations. Hey, wait. I remember hearing a song on here. Where is it? There it is. Meridian. I haven't tried playing it yet, but it can't hurt, right, Akamaru? Arf. Yeah, you're right. Better start now or I'll never get back up to speed. Placing the CD into the small stereo he had next to his bed, he started down tuning his guitar. He didn't really do it that often. He liked more older music along the lines of Metallica and such. American bands really did blow him away. This was new, fresh, and he figured if Sakura was going to stay gone for a while, he might as well brush up. Finally, in the desired tuning, he reached under his bed and pulled out a small amp. On top of it was a digital pedal able to transition his sound from a distorted noise to a clean, peaceful strum. Okay, let's see if I still got it. Hitting play, he flipped over to the 9th track of the album and began. /N. This is actually quite an epic song. I strongly recommend looking it up so you know what Kiba's thrashing out to. The people who survive the sword will find favor in the desert. I will build you up again and you will be rebuilt. I am the painter making this mess a masterpiece. I will rebuild you up again. During the time he was playing, Tsume looked up at his door. She hadn't heard him pick up a guitar in ages. She was glad he was finding things to do with his spare time. He still hadn't come out of his room since the early morning. Does he have to keep it up as loud as he does? Kuramaru asked, complaining about the small patch of screaming in the song. It keeps him out of trouble. She smiled back to her companion. Scene change, all right? I still got it. Kiba proclaimed as he set his guitar down, turning the stereo off. His fingers were kind of stiff from playing, but he was comfortable with where he was now. He never really wanted to start a band, he just loved music as a hobby. It was an easy way to work off stress if he couldn't get out of the house. Looking to his left, he saw the same bird he sent off to see Sakura right at his window. Immediately placing everything down on his bed, he unlocked the window and let the feathered messenger into his hand. Whatcha got there? He asked, looking at the talon. He quickly realized it was from Sakura and ran over to his desk. Oh man. If she replied this quickly, then she has to be close. All right? He grinned widely as he opened the letter. Well, a rather long letter. Kiba, if you're reading this, then I'm okay. I had to fight an Akatsuki member. Luckily I made it out in one piece, but Gaara nearly lost his life. One of the village elders came with us. If it wasn't for her, I would have never beaten him. Gaara died because the beast was extracted from him. But Lady Chiyo, the elder I was telling you about, used a reanimation jutsu. She gave her life so he could come back. I wish you could have come with us, but I don't think you have to question my ability to take care of myself anymore. Oh Kiba. Kissy kissy kissy. Haha. It's me. Naruto. I can't believe you called out me reading the letter. I guess I can't mind my own business sometimes. Anyway, we're all taking turns, but I wanted to say Sakura was incredible. You should have seen her. Anyway, we should be back at the Leaf by tomorrow. Catch you later. Hello, Kiba. It's Kakashi. Despite Sakura's desire to have you come of her own beliefs, I do wish we could have taken you with us. Your tracking would have helped us immensely. But it's okay. We got the job done in the end. See you soon. Hee Kiba, it's 10:10. I had no idea you and Sakura were an item. That's so cute. We had a pretty rough time getting to where we did, but we won. Anyway, Lee is getting really anxious, so I'll hand the note over to him. But Sakura looks really happy. Bye. Kiba. I have discovered an ingenious training exercise with the help of Guy-sensei. The next time we train, you must let me give you a piggyback ride. Afterwards I will ride you until we reach our great physical peak. Do not fear for Sakura, she is in good hands. Kiba. Please don't ask about Lee. Or the piggyback ride Guy-sensei is currently giving Kakashi-sensei. It's best that you don't know the image standing in front of us. It's troubling to the eyes. Take care. Niji Kiba. I hope you've been keeping up with your training while we have been gone. I can honestly say you are steadily catching up to the standards of what Lee and I do on a regular basis. If you keep up your training and stay with it, I'll have some impressive jutsus to show you as a reward. You're a great student and I'm glad I accepted to train you. Say hi to Akamaru for me. Guy, okay. It's me again. I'm still laughing at what Lee wrote. It really is a funny picture. Kakashi looks totally helpless as Guy makes this excited face while he carries him. And when they're in motion, ugh. Anyway, like Naruto said, we're already in the land of fire, so we'll be home by tomorrow. I read everything you said. I have an answer for almost all of it. But I want you to hear it, not see it. Maybe we can make up for my ditching by having that picnic? Tell Akamaru he won't have to wait much longer for me either. Well, I'm running out of space, but I'll be home tomorrow. I can't wait to see you. Love, Sakura, yeah. Kiba lifted the letter up in the air before tossing it to the ceiling in excitement. In his happy yell for joy, he leaned too far back from his chair, causing him to fall on his back. Akamaru. She's coming back tomorrow. Arf. I feel great. Let's go grab some grub, huh? He pats the top of his head before standing up. The two made their way downstairs and out the door. Making their way down the street, they tried looking for an American restaurant. He remembered Choji telling him about a new one that opened up by his home. Problem is, he had never been to Choji's house before, so he had no idea where to go. Spotting Shino and his father heading towards him, he quickly waved his hand out to get their attention. Shino. Mr. Aburame. Both stopped to greet Kiba. Sorry, Kiba. I have to give a report to the Hokage about our last mission. Shino, you can stay with Kiba. Good to see you again. Shibi bid them goodbye before heading off alone. Did you guys just get back? Kiba asked. Shino nodded. Yeah. Had to track another Baikochu beetle for containment. They're still endangered, so we're trying to domesticate them without taking away the environment of nature. Kiba quickly flashes back to the time him, Shino, Naruto and Hinata went to track that very same insect. He also remembers the last-minute failure thanks to Naruto farting on the beetle. I still can't believe he did that. How can Hinata like a guy who just openly does that? So Shino said, grabbing Kiba's attention, which had drifted off. I heard the Kazekage was returned safely. He nodded. Yeah. Sakura and the others are gonna be home tomorrow. I got a letter from her today saying she was already in the land of fire. Shino fixed his glasses. One thing Kiba never understood is why Shino kept himself so concealed. Did it have to do with the bugs? He wasn't exactly a bad-looking guy. Not in the slightest. Just strange that even in the summer he was not only still sporting his now long green coat over just the white one, but he had now donned a green jacket covering the top part of his head. Sometimes I wonder if Shino is gonna just keel over from heat exhaustion. Oh hey, me and Akamaru were going to grab some food. Do you want to come along? Normally I would say yes. But I already ate before I got back. Sorry. Next time though. Shino replied. Anyway, I need to get going. He took a few steps before stopping. How was your night with Sakura? Kiba remembered how Sakura had ran into them that day. Oh. It was good. We're probably hanging out sometime tomorrow whenever she gets back. He gave a noticeable nod despite having his back turned to Kiba. That's good. It's good to get your feelings out. Don't make the mistake of never letting how you are feeling known. He finished, finally leaving. Is he talking about Hinata liking Naruto? He wondered. That was strangely deep for Shino. I wonder what's gotten into him? Continuing down the road, his stomach got the best of him. Not his hunger, it was a pain. He simply ignored it after closing his eyes to brace himself for it. When he opened them, he staggered back. An image before him painted the scene of when Yukon was charging him with a kunai. It was such a quick adjustment of scenery, he felt like he was back where he was. You're going to die, kid, wipe that smirk off your face. Get away from me. He pushed at Yukon. When he blinked, Yukon was gone, the forest was gone, he was back in the village. And he had his hand caught by Tsume. His open hand was barely inches away from Kurenai's growing stomach. Kiba? Kurenai asked in clear shock and awe. Finally coming to realization, he snapped out of his hallucination. Kurenai-sensei, Tsume-sensei, I don't know what happened. I saw something. I saw someone. I freaked out. I'm so sorry. Tsume let go of Kiba's hand, though still had his guard up. Maybe you should go lie down, Kiba. You don't look too good right now. Kiba nodded. Yeah, maybe I should. His stomach immediately following a growl. Actually, me and Akamaru were going to go get some food. Do you guys want to come along? Despite just being recently almost attacked by her former student, Kurenai nodded her head in response. We're actually on the way to go eat with Tsume's team. Why don't you and Akamaru come along? Sounds good. Kiba replied before heading off with them. The two jonin kept their pace slightly ahead of Kiba, who was in the back with Akamaru close to his left. His thoughts kept coming back to him. Why now? Kankuro killed them both, I saw it with my own eyes. They're dead. How can they still be appearing in my head? It has to be just a bad dream. That's all it has to be. Here we are. Tsume pointed to a local barbecue restaurant. Kiba's stomach immediately flipped at the sight. Yeah. Walking inside, he wasn't surprised to see the rest of Team Tsume already sitting at a booth. Choji was eagerly waiting for the meat to cook on the grill placed inside the table. Hey guys. Looks like we found someone else to join us. Tsume said, pointing to Kiba coming up behind them. Hey Kiba. All three responded in different yet closely followed times. Choji sat at the front end next to Ino, while Shikamaru sat on the back end by himself. Kiba sat down next to Ino while the other two jonin took their respective seats by the lazy chunin. So Kiba Ino started with a smile. How's it going with Sakura? That figures, all she ever talks to me about is her, he thought before clearing his throat. Oh, you know. Kiba grinned widely. Great. She's going to be back tomorrow, so we'll see each other then, I'm sure. That's great. You guys really do make a cute couple. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone? Or just you? Shikamaru intervened. Ino glared at Shikamaru. Oh, you know what I meant. Can't you give some support? Shikamaru gave a slight smirk. I already did. I think Kiba knows what I mean. He nodded in remembering their game of shogi not too long ago. As their meal continued, Tsume brought their attention up to the Akatsuki becoming more active. We need to be ready for them to come for Naruto. All of us. He started. But we also need to know when. If we keep sending out ninjas to do missions and they come back, well, there's no telling what might happen. Tsume-sensei, you worry too much. Choji said. If they were going to come for Naruto, they would have either come now or they're afraid to. Isn't the Nine Tails supposed to be the strongest of them all? Asuma nodded. That's also why they'll send their very best. Most likely someone who can withstand a lot of punishment. Someone very difficult to kill. I have a feeling these people will stop at nothing to catch him. That being said, Asuma waved over the waiter to get the check. We're going to need to start training a lot more. And I mean a lot more. Everyone nodded. They all knew the dangers of the Akatsuki. Though they had only seen very little, mostly in reports. As they finished their meals and began leaving, Kiba said his goodbyes as set off in the opposite direction. Oh wait. He remembered. Gotta ask Choji where that American place is. He quickly turned around to catch up with Choji, who was now walking alone. Hey Choji. Choji turned around to see Kiba getting close. What's up, Kiba? You remember that American food place you were telling me about? You're hungry again? That should be me, and I'm full. He laughed, patting his stomach in amusement. Nah. Just for later. I remember you told me it was by your place, but I remember I had never been to your place before, aside from before we left to try and go get Sasuke. Choji grinned. Okay. Well, come on, I'll show you. The two Chunin made their way eastward towards the Akimichi residence. This was where the majority of the local food areas were built. Restaurants were scattered throughout the village, but imported places from other countries sent most of their food to this area of the village. Catching up, Choji put up a serious face that Kiba never really saw except when he fought Jirobo. Asuma-sensei was telling me about how you freaked out earlier, you okay? Kiba stopped in his tracks when he finished. Choji just looked at him. Not judging, not angry, just waiting for a response. I had a dream. It felt real. Choji, do you remember when we fought the Sound Four? Choji nodded. I'll always remember my fight with Jirobo. Yeah, well, Sakan had an ability that I had never seen before. He had some kind of Kekkei Genkai that let him carry another body in his own. In this case, it was his brother. His brother got out of him, and long story short, he fused into my body. I was able to get him out, and in the end Kankuro saved me. But I still dreamt about it. And when I tried to push Kurenai-sensei, I had really thought that I was pushing his brother Yukon out of the way. Choji put a hand on his shoulder. It's okay, man. We beat them. We beat all of them. They can't hurt anyone anymore. Kiba could only sigh. He hadn't dreamed about that fight in years. He saw them both die. How can they be showing up in his head all of a sudden? I felt like I was back in that same fight again. It's never happened up until now, so I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do. Well, have you talked to Lady Tsunade about it? Maybe you have a slight case of trauma disorder you didn't know about. A lot of ninja get it from really difficult fights. Especially if they lose their comrades or get near death themselves. He hadn't thought about it. Maybe it really was just a scar from the past. Even still, he shouldn't have to worry about it. He was stronger now. And he had Sakura. He thought. Yeah. I think I might do that. Choji, don't tell anyone else this. If Sakura found out, she might think I'm some kind of nut and stop talking to me. He giggled, trying to show some humor in the situation. Don't worry. I won't. Choji said as they finally stopped in front of the place Kiba wanted him to show him. Here it is. Oh wow. He looked at the restaurant. It was huge. Completely well designed, as if it had just opened that week. It was packed inside. He made a mental note to come back here when it wasn't so busy. Thanks, Choji. For the new place to eat, and you know. He smiled as he pat Kiba on the back. Don't mention it, buddy. And with that they parted ways. Kiba hadn't noticed it was almost late afternoon. Damn. Where did the day go? Walking towards the center of town, Akamaru started barking. What's up, Akamaru? Arf. Arf. Kiba took a whiff of the air slightly and focused. There was no mistaking it once he filtered it out. You're right. Let's go. Both took off running towards the gate. Kiba's heart was pounding more and more every second. She's here. She's here. She's here. Finally he ran down another road while on Akamaru's back, taking him to the side of the main gate. Upon getting a clear view, all he could see was Guy and Kakashi standing together. Was he too late? Guy-sensei? Kiba said as he came close to them, still riding his best friend. Hello, Kiba. Kakashi waved. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Glad to see my student is so eager to get back to training. That is why you came to the gate, right? Guy asked, confident but then confused. Heh. Sort of. I heard you guys were coming back tomorrow, but then I picked up a scent and he stopped talking as his attention immediately turned to an all too familiar pink-haired kunoichi standing merely 20 feet away from him. Getting off Akamaru, he stood up and looked at her. She had been through quite a bit. She was scratched up clearly. Cut up a little bit, but other than that nothing a long bath couldn't handle. They said nothing as Sakura ran to Kiba and grabbed onto him. The warmth of his Chunin vest quickly gathered moisture from the tears coming down from her face. She really did miss him that much. Quickly wrapping his arms around her back and pulling her closer to him, he brought his voice down to a whisper level. Hey. Sakura smiled, giving a small laugh. Hey. You look pretty banged up. You all right? Sakura smiled, bringing her voice back up to normal volume. You think I'm bad? You should have seen the other guy. They both laughed at her response. Even with all that, she still kept her ever-cheerful attitude. Kiba could tell she was victorious. The smell of hollowed wood and blood, steel and poison littered her clothes. Arf. Akamaru broke the quick silence, getting Sakura's attention. Hey, Akamaru. She said, letting go of Kiba and petting him. The big dog rolled over on his back, craving to have his belly rubbed, which she complied with. He missed you. Kiba added in. Just him? She looked at him with a sarcastic smile on her face. Nah. I heard Ino missed you too. Oh yeah? Not even you? Well, Kiba playfully shrugged his shoulders. Maybe a little bit. She smiled as she stood up from petting Akamaru. I hope so. She said before pecking him on the cheek. All right, you two love bugs. Kakashi interrupted. We have to report our mission to Lady Tsunade. I trust you two won't hold up traffic here at the main gate for much longer? Kiba shook his head. No, sir. I'll make sure she gets home. Kakashi smiled. Good. See you two later then. He finished before disappearing. I hope you haven't been taking a break from your training, son. Guy finally spoke up now that Kakashi was gone. First things tomorrow, will Guy-sensei? Sakura spoke up. Do you think maybe Kiba could come a little late tomorrow? She asked, grabbing onto his hand. What? I can't miss training, but this does feel pretty nice. He thought at the sight of her hand lacing in between his fingers. Heh. I always was a sucker for this kind of thing. Eh? Well, I don't know. Kiba? You understand whatever part of training you miss tomorrow you will have to make up for on your own? Kiba nodded. If anything, I'll just miss the running jog. I can easily make that up and join you two later. Guy stood in thought for a moment. All right. I understand you two aren't really used to the whole being away from each other thing yet. I'll cut you some slack. Just this once, son. Be by as soon as you can tomorrow. You know where we go, so if we're not in a certain spot, check the next one until you find us. Along the way, be sure to make up any and all exercises. Kiba nodded again. No problem, Guy-sensei. Guy couldn't contain his ever-consuming grin. Ah, the power of youthful love. See you tomorrow, Kiba. And with that, Guy disappeared. Both stared blankly at the dissipating cloud of smoke. Yep. That's Guy-sensei for you. Sakura commented. Yeah. You get used to it. Kiba replied. Looking down at her stomach, Sakura couldn't hide the growl coming from it as she looked embarrassed at Kiba. I'm starving. Kiba laughed at the sight of it. Well, let's go get something to eat then. The three began walking without realizing the look some of their familiar ninja gave them. It only took a moment for Kiba to realize he and Sakura were still holding hands. He didn't really care. It was a great feeling. She had just come back, she was tired, dirty, sweaty, and she was holding on to him for dear life, not wanting to let him go. He knew he had to ask her about what he had on his mind. But he figured he could wait till later tonight. Hopefully. So Kiba started. Where do you want to eat? Sakura shrugged her shoulders. Anywhere is fine. I just want to get something. Well, how about there? Kiba pointed to a small restaurant. Sakura shrugged her shoulders. Works for me. Kiba walked up to the store before reading the sign, no dogs allowed. Seeing eye dogs only. No exceptions. Akamaru whined as he put his head down. Ah, don't worry, Akamaru will go somewhere else. Arf. What? Are you sure? Arf. Arf. He just keeps looking out for me. All right, buddy, if you say so. All right, Akamaru, I'll see you at home. He bid his friend farewell before Akamaru took off towards the direction of the Inuzuka home. I feel bad. Sakura said. I didn't want him to not come. Kiba shook his head. It's okay. He said he wanted us to be alone. She smiled, giving up fighting her blush around Kiba. They walked in and grabbed a booth. They were nearly completely silent as they ate. Kiba only ordered something small, having just eaten less than a few hours ago. Sakura, on the other hand, ordered 2 entrees, and even though she was eating fairly quickly, she was eating at her normally delicate pace. So why did he want us to be alone? She asked, breaking the silence. Well, I tell Akamaru everything. I read the letter I wrote to you out loud, and I read it out loud to him for the one you wrote to me. He just remembered what he was going to ask her. Speaking of that. Shouldn't we talk about that? She nodded but put her hand up. Maybe when I've had a shower and smell like a regular person again. She giggled when she finished. Heh. Who does she think she's kidding? She smells more than a regular person. He thought to himself. No matter how dirty she looked, he always saw something good on her in her, no matter what. After they paid, she got on her feet. I better get back home and take a shower. Are you doing anything tonight? Kiba was taken back a bit by her question. She was asking him that? No, actually I'm not. She smiled. Good. I was wondering if you'd like to come over. His head soared to the clouds the moment the words left her lips. House. Her house? Me? Us? Yeah. He replied eagerly. Well, let's go then. He looked confused as he played with the zipper to his Chunin vest. I'm coming right now? Of course, silly. You know how far our houses are. Unless you're busy, and before she knew it, Kiba had already picked himself up and was standing right next to her. Let's go. He replied as he reached his hand for hers. Her blush carried all over her face as she smiled, lacing their fingers together. As they walked to her home, they hadn't counted on seeing old friends notice them along the way. Ino, Shikamaru and Choji were making their way away from them when a distant woo. Go Sakura! Was heard from off in a distance. Ugh! That girl! She thought to herself. Regardless, Kiba was never really embarrassed. He was so easygoing, she regularly thought she was overreacting to things she normally thought she wasn't at first. When she got home, she unlocked the door and opened it to find a note on the mirror to her left. It was from her parents. Sakura, your father and I are celebrating our anniversary early. We're going to be at the village hidden in hot water for the weekend. Be good. No boys. Mom, ugh. She complained out loud, leaving the note, making her way upstairs to her room. Kiba glanced at the note enough to see the no boys notice and laughed. Making their way up to her room, Kiba felt himself reach a high he didn't think was possible. Her scent. Everywhere. He was in the heart of it all. It was so powerful. Everything he had ever wondered about her was there. Her room wasn't anything what he expected. It was basic. Drawers to his right, a desk not too far in front of him to his left, and a twin-sized bed to the upper right corner. At the direct end of the room was a sliding glass door leading to the balcony. "Wait here. I'll be back in a sec," she said, quickly grabbing some pajamas before making her way to the shower. Kiba sat on her bed. Confused but proud. "Yes," he shouted to himself, but quickly clamped his mouth, hoping Sakura didn't hear him. When there was no response, his thoughts went wild. "I'm here. Jesus Christ, I'm here. Oh man, she's taking a shower and I'm in her room waiting for her. Yes." Keeping his proud grin across his face, he looked to see 2 porch chairs on the balcony. He figured he didn't want to be bored, even though he wasn't. The scent was like an orgy for his nose. He slid the door open and sat back in one of the chairs. He sat down on the right chair, staring up at the sky. He remembered their trip to the top of the Thirds Monument. The now near night sky, still showing fading signs of daylight, was already broadcasting its presence of stars over the hidden leaf. He turned his head at the sound of a door opening to find Sakura entering the room. Her simple red shirt and black pajama pants were a few sizes too big for her, but then again, they don't make clothes like that to be tight. She ran her fingers through her fingers a few more times before noticing Kiba staring at her. She waved at him before coming outside herself. "It's beautiful out tonight." He started. His concentration on the sky quickly broke when Sakura sat on his lap, her legs stretching off to the right, her arms wrapped across his neck. "It is," she replied. "So do you want to talk?" he asked. "About what?" She pretended to not know what he meant. "Kidding." She rebounded, kissing his cheek. That feeling always gave him a shock through his spine. Not as much as their first, but like a house getting electricity back from losing power in a storm. His heart had been racing since they had even entered her house, but at this point he felt like someone put a microphone next to it. He was sure she could hear it by now. "Okay." He finally broke the silence. "You said you had answers for most of it, right?" She nodded. "All right, then can I ask you?" "Ask me what?" "What are we?" She knew that question was going to pop up. At least it was then. She wasn't sure either, as a matter of fact. Were they official? Were they a couple? Were they just some dumb kids who thought they knew what love was? "I don't know," was the only response she could give. Kiba furrowed his eyebrows a little bit before thinking of a quick answers. "Well, if you don't know, can I tell you what I think?" She looked at him. "Sure." Kiba cleared his throat. "I think at this point we both know we're more than just friends. If not by title, then by feeling. I feel something that I've never felt before. Yet I know how it feels. Isn't that weird?" He looked at her, who was now facing him merely inches away from his face. "I love you, Sakura. And I think you love me too." She couldn't hold back the red that came over her face. He was right. He was more than right, he was right on the money. She loved him, and the feeling didn't feel wrong or sudden or impractical. Was she ready for this though? Could she handle it? They were both ninjas. Both chunins, as a matter of fact. One day one of them could die in a mission. They could both die. Was that fair? She gathered up as much strength as she could. She inhaled a bit. "The only thing not fair is not trying." "I do." She smiled before burying her face into his neck. "I love you so much, Kiba. I didn't think I could. So fast. So sudden. But I was only fooling myself. But I'm so scared. I want to be with you more than anything, but after everything that's happened and the Akatsuki. I've seen what they can do. What if they come for me? What if they come for you?" Kiba hummed to himself. "You're right. It's possible tomorrow the Akatsuki could be right at our doorstep and unleash hell on us all. But if they do," he ran his fingers through her hair. "Wouldn't you want to know you said everything you wanted to say?" "A friend of mine told me," Shino's words quickly ran through his head. It's good to get your feelings out. Don't make the mistake of never letting how you are feel known. He told me that it's good to get your feelings out. And you shouldn't ever not let your feelings be known. That would be a mistake. She looked at him, taking her head away, and put herself close to him. Then does that mean? He nodded his head. Only if you want to. She quickly smiled before kissing him. As she pulled away, she could feel the smile grow on his face before their lips made their departure from one another. I want to. His smile grew wide as he hugged her. Then will you be my girlfriend? She happily giggled at his question. Yes, Kiba. I will. His hug grew tighter in happiness. He couldn't believe it. She was finally his. Officially his. Was he dreaming? Nah. He knew he wasn't. But his dreams had certainly come true, and nothing was going to get in between them. He just knew this was the beginning of the happiest moments of his life. It's so nice out tonight. He whispered to her. It's why I love this balcony. I come out here a lot to think. She slowly brought herself to her feet, taking Kiba's hands to pick him up. Kiba opened his mouth to speak, but she hushed him with a finger over his lips. There's no need to speak anymore. Not tonight. He looked into her eyes. The moonlight glittered them in such a way they were near captivating. She was so mesmerizing. What did she want? Trying to take an unnoticed whiff, he could tell. Already? She took his hands and guided him back to her room until they stood at the side of the bed. She kissed him softly while reaching for his zipper and slowly dragged it down, eventually removing his vest. Sakura, are you sure it's okay, Kiba? She kissed him again, silencing him. But she nodded her head. So am I. No way? I figured someone as good looking as her. Well, then again, she didn't really have a boyfriend. Guess that makes sense why she's still a virgin. He finally gave up. There was no way he could convince her to say no at this point unless he walked out. And after just romantically signing himself to her, how could he walk away? He wanted to be with her forever if she wanted it. He wouldn't have it any other way. And this was the best way to show it. When she broke the kiss, Kiba's glance had changed completely. He wasn't nervous or timid anymore. His gaze craved, he hungered, and his aura screamed determination. He made his way to her neck, slowly warming it with his kisses, slowly sucking on it until a faint amount of blood rose from it. Kiba, she moaned his name. He looked back up at her. You're mine now, were his only words before kissing her again, reaching for the bottom of her shirt. His weight against hers quickly gave way as they fell back onto the bed with Kiba on top and Sakura reaching for his black shirt under his vest, which was removed already. He stood up and turned as he removed his shirt, then faced her again. Oh my god. He's so oh my god. She thought, staring at him. He was completely defined. Not by lifting weights but by hard and long training. It was the best kind of definition, and it drove her wild as she wanted him more by catching sight of it. She ran her hands up his chest, up to his face, bringing it to hers and kissing him again, pulling him on top of her to the bed. Tonight they became more than a couple. They created, molded, and found love. For after tonight they both knew they were one. Chapter 7. His eyes were still glued shut. He couldn't open them. He didn't want to. Daylight was forcing entry into his eyelids, but he still kept them closed. His arms flopped onto the pillow next to him. Was it just him? He wasn't home. He knew that. He spent the night at Sakura's house. The thought made him melt. He had done 3 things on his list in one go. Confessed his love for her, made her his girlfriend, and claimed her as his mate. Well, the third thing he didn't need to mention yet. But it was a victory for him through and through. His eyes finally opened as he heard the door open quickly, forgetting her parents could come home at any time despite it being Saturday. Get up, Sakura said as she walked over to him and shook him. My eyes are open, you know, he sighed, turning and covering himself. She scoffed. Come on. It's already 10 o'clock and what? He quickly shot up. Guy-sensei. I'm so it's okay, Kiba. I talked to him this morning. I told him I really missed you and asked if he could give you the day off. He said yes, but he expects you to work twice as hard to make up for it. He sighed. Great. Got the day off to dread for a double. She smiled as she sat down next to him in the bed, wrapping her arms around his neck. But it's with me. Isn't that enough? He smiled, remembering their incredible experience last night. Yeah. You're right. She smiled and kissed him before standing back up and walking out. Kiba couldn't take his eyes off her. Her figure was so perfect, he confirmed that last night. I made you breakfast. It's ready whenever you feel like coming down. She turned, smiling at him before walking out the door. He laid his head back down. This is the life. He felt so free. Everything he ever wanted in his life was coming to him exactly how he wanted it. No worries. No secrets. It was just them. What a woman. He thought out loud. Getting up, he looked at the arm of the bed to see a pair of dark blue pajama pants and a black shirt sitting there. Sakura must have taken them from her dad's room for him. Putting them on, he headed downstairs. The smell was amazing. She was still cooking, no mistaking the smell of a grill and waffles? He quickly ran down to see Sakura making a large pile of waffles along with eggs, bacon still cooking on the grill and biscuits still on the tray as if they were just removed from the oven. Sakura, this as he looked at the practical feast before gulping and regaining himself. This looks amazing. He walked up to his girlfriend and kissed her before taking a seat. Since Gai-sensei gave you the whole day off, I wanted to make it a good day for both of us. I'm off too, so we have the whole day to ourselves. Kiba quickly reached behind himself, grabbing onto Sakura's waist, pulling her over to him as he forced her onto his lap. It better be. He smirked as he kissed her and brought her closer to him. Sakura gave a light moan before pulling herself away from him. I don't think I could go again. Not right after what happened last night. She giggled while blushing to herself as she got up. Yeah. I mean, what can I say? I admire my own stamina sometimes. His boatful laughter quickly returned by a heavy slap across the face as he fell out of his chair onto the floor. Pig. She said while she cleaned up the dishes she had used to make the food. What? Aw, come on. He complained, returning to his seat, waiting for her to sit. You can eat now if you want. Kiba shook his head. It's rude. I want to wait till you're sitting here with me. He smiled back as he finished. She blushed as she finished setting the assorted items to soak. Finally finished, she sat down with her boyfriend and they began eating. In Kiba's case, gorging himself silly. Before she knew it, almost half the eggs were gone, almost all the bacon was gone, only 8 biscuits out of the original 12 remained, and there were at least 3 full waffles taken. Kiba? His face stuffed, he swallowed before asking. Yeah, babe? You don't have to overdo it. I'm not. She quirked her eyebrow. Not overdoing it? I slaved over a hot stove for over an hour and you just finished a third of it in record-breaking time. Don't tell me that's not overdoing it. Ugh. Her inner self retaliated. I swear. You're worse than Naruto. His eyes showing anger, he doesn't even swallow his food as the chipmunk cheek Inuzuka responded. Va? I'm Newfanvike Varufo. He said before an egg fell out of his mouth, causing Sakura to burst out into laughter. Blushing, he quickly swallowed his food before grabbing a few biscuits and reaching for the jam. Sakura, this is great. Really? I never knew you had it in ya. His compliment was obviously not seen the way he had expected, as Sakura simply gave him a look before crossing her arms and humping at him while turning her head to the side. What? Didn't know I had it in ya? Yeah. I heard your soldier pills were horrible, so I'm really impressed with the food. Wrong thing to say again. The biscuit never made it to Kiba's mouth as he fell backwards again out of his chair onto the ground. What? What did I do this time? I thought boyfriend and girlfriend weren't supposed to be abusive? He cringed as he laid there. Ugh. That's something Sai would say. Fine. See if I ever make you breakfast again. Before she finished, Kiba was already behind her. Before she could react, he had already wrapped his arms around her neck as he hugged her from behind. He's so fast, I had completely forgotten about that. I didn't mean it like that, Sakura. They really were compliments. This meal is a total knockout. If it's this good, I can't wait to see how the rest of the day turns out. She looked up at him and pecked his lips before looking down to finish her food. Wait, where was the biscuit she just picked up? Kiba. His mouth was full and full of guilt as he swallowed. Yeah. You're such a pig. She yelled as she punched him, sending him back onto the living room couch. His feet only in the air, she could hear a faint "I love you." Humph. She patted her hands off as she returned to her meal, hopefully in peace and not stolen from under her nose. Kiba finally came back to the table and finished eating. Finally stuffed. Only took 3/4 of the meal to do it. Where do you put it all? Training. I'll probably burn this all off in a few hours just by my metabolism. It's that fast? When you train with Guy Sensei, everything is that fast. It made sense to her. She finally picked up the plates and washed them off before letting the big ones soak to get the stick out of them. So Kiba asked, "What do you want to do today?" She shrugged. "I'd still like to make up for making you wait for the picnic. But we can do that later today. How about we go shopping?" He shrugged at the idea. "Sure. Whatever helps. Oh wait. I gotta get home and pick up Akamaru." She shook her head. "Your sense of smell is the pride of your clan, right?" He tilted his head in confusion. "Yeah, why?" She pointed to a door on her left leading to the pantry. Kiba stood up and walked over to it, opening it to find a sleeping Akamaru on a large dog bed. "Akamaru?" Akamaru woke up before stretching himself out on the bed and walking up to his master and barking him as a greeting. "Hey boy. When did you get here?" "Arf. Really? Last night? Why didn't you say anything?" "Arf. Arf. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. We were she was kinda noisy. I wasn't, and Sakura definitely overheard their conversation as her fist sent Kiba flying right onto the dog bed Akamaru had just gotten off of. "Me noisy? May I remind you who was the noisiest when he hugged Kiba?" She stamped her foot on the ground in embarrassment before walking back to her room. "PSH women," he said, getting up. Akamaru could smell the scent of victory all over Kiba. He was glad for his master even though he was taking abuse for it. "Arf? Nah. She's not mad at me. Well, for right now she is. She'll get over it. I can still hear you, you know." Kiba clamped his mouth as he heard his lovely girlfriend shrieking at him from upstairs. Akamaru tilted his head down in a small whine as he tucked his tail between his legs. "Yeah, sometimes that's how I feel too. Scene change, not a cloud in the sky. The perfect kind of day for the new couple as they, along with Akamaru, walked down the street going around the village without any destination in mind. Despite some window shopping, Kiba found more of an appreciation for Sakura's taste in music when they looked in the record store. Still true to his metal roots, he at least gave an acknowledging nod when she would show him more upbeat and popular boy bands. Looks like everything went well. Kiba and Sakura turned to see Shino behind them with Hinata and Kurenai. "Oh. Hey guys." Kiba waved to them with both their intertwined hands as he turned his attention to them. "No training today, Kiba?" Kurenai asked. "Not today, Sensei. Guy Sensei gave me the day off." She smiled. "That's good. You'll get that much-needed rest you've been looking for." She glanced down at their hands joined together before smiling. "I'm glad you two are finally official." They both smiled, Sakura giving a much deeper shade of red and blush than Kiba, who just laughed. "So what are you guys up to?" he asked. Kurenai rubbed her stomach with a rare smile across her face. "The rest of the team and I went to meet Tsume at the hospital. I wanted to find out and didn't feel like waiting any longer. We're having a son." Sakura's eyes lit up at the sound of it. She loved children even though she had never really considered having any herself. Wow! That's awesome, Kiba said, congratulating her. So does that mean you're taking time off? She nodded. Unfortunately, I can't keep risking the baby going out on missions anymore. I'll be grounded until about a month after he's born. What are you guys going to do? Shino? Hinata? Sakura asked. Shino shrugged his shoulders. If my dad is ever doing something, he'll ask me to come along. Now I'll probably take him up on his offer. Hinata glanced around really quick before returning her attention to them. I may train with my father in Niji. But I don't know yet. Kiba smiled. Don't sweat it, guys. It's good to relax every once in a while. Anyway, we're gonna get going. Catch you guys later. He turned as Sakura waved goodbye before joining hands with him again and making their way down the road. He looks happy, Shino commented to the two kunoichi as the couple slowly left their sight. Kurenai looked closer at Kiba. Too happy, I think. Scene change, no way? Naruto couldn't believe it. He constantly looked at their laced hands, then back at them. Laced hands and back at them. You guys are? They both nodded their heads, Sakura hugging him from the side that their hands had joined at. Last night. Yep. Last night. Kiba sighed before looking up at the sky, beaming in his sexual victory. Sakura glared at him, giving him a look of warning. I swear if Naruto finds out I slept with him, I'm going to kill my boyfriend, having not been with him for 24 hours yet. Then I'm going to kill Naruto. Wow. Talk about weird. I never thought I'd see you guys as a couple. Naruto held his nose as if a foul odor was passed. And what's that mark on your neck, Sakura? Did a bug have dinner on it or something? Sakura turned her glare to him instead. Her blush quickly taken over by anger. Naruto. She let go of Kiba's hand before charging after Naruto, who screamed as he ran off. Arf? I don't know either, buddy. They got one weird relationship. He observed as Naruto was getting the life choked out of him. Then again, maybe I shouldn't have been so rough on her. Her skin is pretty fair. Hey babe. Kiba called over to Sakura, who was still gripping his neck in mid-shake. Come on, let him go. Much as I'd like to see Naruto get laid out, I thought we had plans? Sakura finally let go of him as she remembered she had to get back to pack the basket up for their picnic. You. Behave. She pointed at Naruto, who was still dizzy from his lack of oxygen. She forcefully grabbed Kiba's hand as she dragged him off back to her home. Akamaru whined as he followed close behind. By now she was in a much better mood. She was humming to herself as she packed together some sandwiches and a long blanket. She grabbed a few bags of chips and some bottles of water. Perfect. She smiled to herself. Go get it. A small red ball bounced down the stairs as Akamaru ran down in hot pursuit, sliding across the wooden floor as he jumped and grabbed the ball, wrestling it in his mouth. She sighed with a smile on her face. That boy and his dog Kiba made his way downstairs to find the basket pretty full and Sakura waiting for him, while Akamaru pleasured himself to chewing the red rubber ball he had thrown for him to get. He approached his girlfriend, kissing her. Got everything? Are you ready? Yeah. You said the park is pretty close, right? She nodded. It's not even a mile down the road. I'll show you. She took the basket in her hand and reached for his with a smile. Can't wait. He smiled, taking her hand, lacing their fingers as they made for the door. Come on, buddy. Kiba called to Akamaru. Arf. What? Are you serious? What did he say? Sakura asked. He said he wants to stay. She looked confused. Akamaru was the kind of dog who seemed like he would die from boredom if he didn't get out at all. All right, Akamaru, if you're sure. You know the drill. Head on home, tell mom I'm with Sakura. He barked in response as he grabbed the ball and trotted home. He's acting really weird for some reason. he observed. Really? She asked. Yeah. He never does this. I don't think he's jealous, but something doesn't feel right. She tried to get his attention off the subject by kissing him. Hey. It'll be okay, you'll see. Let's go. Kiba smiled as he complied, heading opposite the direction Akamaru went. Scene change, the breeze was calming. Small, slight, and enough to give the day the extra added detail they needed. Kiba was laying back on a blue and white checkered blanket while Sakura laid next to him, holding onto him with an embrace from the side. The food was gone, drinks had been drank, and all that remained was for them to enjoy their time together. This is great, he said, breaking the silence. You're great, she said, gently kissing his lips. Yep. I am. Her face quickly scrunched. He's so cocky. Ugh. I can't ever compliment him sometimes. She sighed before elbowing him in his stomach, causing him to sit up on impact. Ow. Hey, come on, why'd you go and do that? You're so full of yourself sometimes. So? She stared at him in shock. He wasn't even getting the point. Whatever. She sat cross-legged as she watched the view. Kiba giggled as he grabbed onto her, rolling her over on top of him. Don't whatever me, miss. She smirked mischievously, putting her hands onto his. Oh yeah? What if I do it again? He smiled back. I don't think you. His vision turned to his right. Someone was watching them. What's wrong? Don't move. His left hand reached into her pouch, pulling a kunai out. Company. He pushed her up and threw the knife towards the direction of the scent. The shadow behind the tree moved quickly but didn't leave. Get out here. Kiba yelled at the shadow, taking a stance and pulling out a kunai of his own. Out of the shadows stepped a fellow leaf shinobi. In his hands was a large sketch pad with several pencils and an annoyingly signature half-real smile on his face. Sai? Sakura asked, sitting up. Hello, Sakura. He looked at Kiba. Hello, dog boy. Your aim is terrible. What was that? Kiba picked his kunai up, reversing it, ready to throw it if he needed to. You want to see terrible aim? I'll throw this kunai at the grass and hit your fucking heart if you want to see terrible aim. Kiba. Sakura touched his hand, slowly moving the kunai down. It's okay. Her attention turned to Sai. Why were you watching us? Sai lifted his sketchbook up. I was drawing. Originally I was drawing landscape, but after seeing you two I decided to draw from a distance. Kiba put his knife away. Sai was obviously annoying but not a threat. So are you still drawing? Sakura asked. Not anymore. I'm merely adding color at this point to fill in the lines. Should I add extra red to Dogboy's face? How about I add extra red to your face? Huh, tough guy? Kiba tried to run at Sai before Sakura caught him again. Kiba. Please. She whispered into his ear. That is perfect. Just like I was talking about. Sai gave his smile before taking the sketchbook out and trying to find the right shade of color. Drawing you is simple, dog boy. You require very little color and very little difficulty to draw. He growled. He was going to lose it. You want to see color? I'll show you some goddamn color. He reached for Sai's face, forgetting that Sakura was still holding him. We should probably go. Sai? Yes, ugly? The line in Sakura's head was snipped. Who are you calling ugly? Now the positioning was reversed. Kiba had to keep his furious girlfriend away from ripping her temporary teammate's body to shreds. Much as he'd like to see it happen, he didn't like the idea of visiting his love behind bars. Sakura, it's okay. You know you're not ugly. He tried to reassure her. Bam. That felt good. It did, didn't it? See you tomorrow, Sai. The couple walked away, both with red, swollen hands due to a combination punch to Sai after much-needed frustration needed to be released. I thought I was a loose cannon. Nope. You sure showed me. Kiba laughed. Well, I try. She smiled, grabbing his arm as they walked. What are you guys doing tomorrow? Kiba asked, remembering what she said to him. We have some information. Sasori, the Akatsuki member I fought, told me he was going to meet with an agent of Orochimaru at Tenchi Bridge 10 days from then. It's already been 6, so we're heading out tomorrow. I see. For what? Sasuke? Fuck, she's still not over him, is she? I'll be back soon though. The hidden grass isn't far away at all. Yeah, but neither is Orochimaru. She frowned. He was right. He wasn't going to be easy. I'm going to be okay. We're just going to find Sasuke, right? He looked at her with no emotion surfacing at that statement. She was confused and a look of hurt slowly crept its way to her face. Is he jealous? But we're together, Sasuke, he's just someone from my past now. I could never be with him. Yes, but not for whatever you may be thinking. It's not like that anymore, Kiba. If it was, I would never be with you. You know that. She pleaded to him, tightening her grip around his arm. He sighed. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I just don't like hearing his name. The guy's a dick. She nodded in agreement. He sure is. But he's still my teammate and a could-be victim of Orochimaru. Naruto's set on it, so we have to at least try, right? He shrugged his shoulders. I guess. And you're sure it's just Team Kakashi? Yes. I shouldn't have even told you this. Please promise me you won't follow us. Okay? He shook his head. I can't promise you that. But I'll promise to have faith in your abilities. That doesn't mean I have doubts about Orochimaru's or Sasuke's. They're a lot stronger. He was right. Orochimaru may be a complete psychopath, but he was a Sannin for a reason. He was incredibly powerful, and if Sasuke learned anything from him in 3 years, it had to be rows and rows of new jutsus. For now they just stood there together. The hills of the meadows seemed to stretch for miles and miles. It was a perfect picture she never wanted to leave. But she knew she had to. She had to at least try and get Sasuke back. And she could feel Kiba's uneasiness about him. She knew if he came with them, Kiba wouldn't even try to bring him back, he'd try to kill him. If that happened, either one of them could get killed. You know, Sakura said, breaking the silence. I never thought I could be so lucky. Kiba looked at her. What do you mean? She kissed his sleeve. You silly. I never in a million years thought we would be together. Me neither, he smirked. I'm sure not complaining though. She shook her head. Me neither. Scene change. As the sun slowly fell behind the blanket of the hills on the horizon, the young couple made their way through the streets of the village back towards her house. Unsuspecting that a certain Sharingan ninja was close by. You two are out rather late, said the calm voice. Both turning to the voice, Kiba took a defensive stance in front of Sakura, only to find it to be Kakashi. Reading. Don't worry, he said, flipping through a page. I'm just enjoying the scenery of tonight. I didn't expect you two would still be out. Especially you, Sakura. Your mission is tomorrow. Kakashi-sensei? I thought you were supposed to be resting in the hospital. Sakura asked. I am. And I was released this morning. Just no more missions for a while. Need to take it easy after overusing the Mangekyo Sharingan in our last fight. He coolly replied, flipping another page. Whoa. These guys are that tough? Kakashi-sensei has to be out for a mission? What kind of people are the Akatsuki? Kiba's mind raced to him. Sakura. Kakashi cleared his throat. I'd like to talk to Kiba. Alone. Sakura looked as Kiba's face completely went to confusion, looking at Sakura, mouthing me? Okay. She said, letting go of his hand. I'll see you when I get back. It won't be more than a few days, I promise. Okay. He replied seriously as him and Kakashi's gaze met. Sakura temporarily broke their focus as she kissed him before walking home. I love you. Kiba looked back at Sakura, who was starting to make her ways away from him. I love you too. Watch yourself. He replied, still keeping his gaze fixed with Kakashi's. Something's up. He's tense. I don't like this. Kakashi waited for her to turn a corner before closing his book. Now then, Kakashi-sensei? Kiba asked, confused. Kiba. I wouldn't say my nose is as good as yours, but I can easily pick up powerful scents that most humans can't distinguish. His eyebrow angled as his voice lowered. One of those scents being the aftermath of intercourse. Kiba's entire body tensed up. He knows? How the hell? He took a step back. Kakashi-sensei, she's just a girl, Kiba. And you're just a boy. Do you really think you're ready for something like this? Kiba went from scared to confused. Ready? Like for a relationship? What's he talking about? Kakashi shook his head. I'm afraid if you don't know what I mean now, I can't explain it any further. Be ready to stand for everything you have been taught when the time comes. And with that, Kakashi gave a cheerful wave before disappearing. Kiba was in complete confusion at this point. Don't know? What don't I know? And what's he talking about? He brainstormed out loud. Making his way home, his thoughts kept replaying over and over with what Kakashi said. I'm afraid if you don't know what I mean now, I can't explain it any further. Be ready to stand for everything you have been taught when the time comes. What does that even mean? He thought to himself. At least he was home. Didn't seem too dark as the lights were still on at home. Opening his door, he was greeted with little room to step inside, walking straight into his mother with crossed arms and a not-so-happy expression on her face. HMO inside. Now. Chapter 8. So what? Kiba growled at his mother. I can smell it all over you. What were you thinking? She retaliated. The coffee table in the living room was all that separated mother and son from a possible battle. Akamaru and Kuramaru growling respectively across same sides. Do you have any idea what you've done? And so young. Tsume growled. What are you talking about, Ma? You have no idea, do you? She sighed. Pup, finding a mate and marking them is more than just sex. I can't believe after everything you've learned you still have no idea how much more you need to commit. Commit to what? Why the hell won't anyone say anything direct to me? He yelled back. His mother simply stood there in blank expression. Slap. Kiba's face stayed in perfect stillness to the right as he faced the ground. His mother's hand was stinging as the redness welled tears into his eyes. What am I doing wrong? What did I do? He asked hysterically in his mind. It's about the life you two must lead now, she said, staring at him. In this clan we mate for life. Or have you forgotten how I never even bothered to find another man after your father left? He finally put his fix on her, his cheek was still stinging. Mom, I love her. I understand what it means. I want to be with her not just for a month or something but forever. I don't think words could even do it justice. I can smell it coming off of you. Her scent and yours are a good mix, pup. And there is no question of how much you love her. But you are so young. What difference does it make if I'm young and found someone I love? He asked back, his anger beginning to regain itself. Tsume merely shook her head. That's not something I can tell you. I have no right. And with that, her and her companion left them in complete confusion. Damn it. Why the hell doesn't anyone tell me anything? Akamaru nudged his head to his master's leg, bringing him back to reality. Let's go to bed, Akamaru. I think I've had enough of today. Arf. With that, they both went up to his room. Scene change, the next few days were a blur to Kiba mostly. Sakura was away going to Tenchi Bridge and he was still training with Guy and Lee. One of the days the whole team trained together. It was a nice change of pace aside from Tenten teasing Kiba about how much he looked like Lee and Guy. She said they were starting the wrong kind of fad. All right, team, you are dismissed. Kiba, could I talk to you? Guy asked, waving the other three shinobi away. Sure. He said, sitting down in the flattened grass from today's training. You were getting pretty crazy out there today. Are you okay, son? Now that he thought about it, he was pretty wild. More than usual. He took the first 8 palms from Niji on purpose just to catch them and toss him violently away before giving chase to try and incapacitate him. And he relentlessly attacked Lee's guard with no interest in even getting past it. Just to hit him. And when Tenten unleashed a scroll of weapons, Kiba's Fong over Fong was so wild it shot the shurikens and kunais off in wild directions, showing little regard for who they would hit. I've just been under a lot of stress, sensei. Guy folded his arms. This was obvious, but he couldn't pin it together. If you need to vent, I'm all ears. Guy replied, giving his thumbs up. I was a boy like you, Kiba. We all were. We have to go through something similar at some point in time. He shook his head. I don't know about that. Sakura and I, to put it out there, we had sex. Right after that, everyone started giving me these weird lectures about how I'm too young for this and too young for that, how I need to figure everything out. I mean, why the hell can't people just be straightforward and tell me what the fuck they're talking about? He yelled the last sentence, throwing a kunai into a tree. Guy thought. I think I know what they're talking about. And they're right, you do need to figure it out on your own. It's a path only we can follow ourselves. We will all be here to support you, but it is not our solemn right to break the news to you. He stood up, staring at him with desperate eyes. What news, sensei? His finger raised and he shook it. I'm sorry, Kiba, you'll just have to let it come to you. As much as I'd like to help you out, there's only so much I can allow myself to reveal. This is not one of those things I can lend a hand with. Kiba sighed. He knew he couldn't win. He just wishes he knew what everyone was keeping from him. Now then, Guy said. I told you if you kept your training up I would show you some handy jutsus. How about I do that right now? Would that help take your mind off of things? He smiled a bit. His sensei was bribing him with new jutsus. He supposed he could make an exception. All right, Guy sensei. Fantastic. Now the first rule about this jutsu, scene change. The hot water normally soothed out all of the normally sore muscles on his body. Not this time. Something about today's training made them still sore. He did feel better, at least for being clean. Stepping out of the shower, he dried himself off and headed downstairs to grab dinner. Opening the door to the bathroom door, he froze in place. There in his doorway, an all too familiar figure stood in his way. Tall gray hair, blue lipstick and pale skin stood directly in front of him. Boo. Kiba took a step back before being stopped by the sink. His pajamas clung tight to his still wet skin, now beginning to mix with sweat as he stared an old enemy directly in the face. Sakon? Close. The figure stepped closer. I'm Yukon. Poor brother Sakon won't be joining us thanks to that annoying puppet boy from the sand. He quickly threw a punch to Yukon, who simply grabbed it. Now. Do you greet all of your guests that way? Get the fuck out of my house, you freak. He threw his other fist, connecting and evaporating his image completely. His laughter lingered as his image completely faded away. There's no way he should be alive. And he was just staring at me dead in the face. But I have to tell the Hokage. That wasn't just a hallucination this time. Scene change. After finishing dinner, Kiba and Akamaru quickly raced down to the Hokage mansion. After reaching the main gate, he lifted off Akamaru's back before running upstairs and banged furiously on the door to the main office. What? Who the hell is it? Tsunade shouted at the door. Kiba burst into the room completely out of breath. Kiba? Tsunade looked confused. Lady Tsunade. Sakon, I mean Yukon. In the bathroom. He's alive. He lost focus as he fell to the ground and lost consciousness. When he came to, his eyes were still closed. He could hear the voice of the Hokage and others as he tried to filter them out. Physically, he's fine. His brain activity tested in the highly disturbed range, however. A voice said. I see. Tsunade replied. He mentioned something about Sakon and Yukon. They were ninjas of the Sound 4. Kiba fought them 3 years ago, but he claims he just saw them in his home. There were no alarms tripped. And we spoke to his mother. She says no one except her Kiba and her other daughter Hannah were in the home at the time along with their Neen dogs. Let me take a look. Another voice came into range. This one was more masculine and serious. A few moments passed by before his voice came back into play. There's a small patch of irregular cells mixed into his own. It looks like cancer, but they're of a completely different DNA. It's almost as if someone fused their DNA within his own. They did. The voices turned to see Kiba sitting up on the hospital bed, completely dumbfounded by what they found out. In front of him was Tsunade, followed by an Umbu member with a hawk mask and Hinata's father Hayashi. How are you feeling, Kiba? Hayashi asked. Fine, Lord Hayashi. What do you mean by my cells being mixed in with? I used my Byakugan to look into your cellular structure. Did you know you had the cells of another person in your system? He shook his head. No way. But I heard what you said before and I think it all makes sense now. I saw Yukon in a hallucination and attacked Kurenai-sensei. And before I ran over here I swear he was right in my face. Tsunade sighed. How long have you known about this? Just when it happened a few days ago, honest. Choji thought it was just trauma, but it's more than that, isn't it? She nodded. We need to get those cells out of your structure before they keep multiplying. That's how Yukon keeps appearing. When he fused into your body he still left a trace remain of himself. The real him is long dead, but this small remnant is still lurking in your body. Your recent training has escalated the growth of his cells into your body. Slowly but constant. Kiba looked at his stomach. Great. Scene change, hospitals. He just never liked them. Preparing to go into surgery wasn't exactly something he was liking, but if there was a way to get the last of the cells out of his system he wasn't about to say no. Akamaru sat at the bed with him. The hospital gown made him feel more uncomfortable by the second. He was going to be under for a while, but what would happen? They never told him how long this would take. What would happen if he could die? Nothing. Tsunade walks in, reaching for a pair of gloves she straps to herself. Are you ready? His expression was blank. He had no idea what was going to happen. He needed help. He needed to find out why this was happening and if there was some other way he could get rid of it. He needed Sakura. But she was gone and had no idea what was going on. Maybe this was the best thing for them. She wouldn't know about this and he'd have plenty of time to recover and put this behind him. He nods. Let's do this. Scene change, you're going to be asleep for this. Before we start I want you to sign a form with your permission if we are allowed to resuscitate you. Wait, why? Tsunade locked her fingers together as she looked at him. There's a good chance you could flatline during the surgery. Because of your rank you are above needing parental consent to sign these forms. If you sign this form and you do flatline during the operation we will do everything in our power to resuscitate you. If you sign the line saying you do not want us to, then if you flatline we will simply end the operation. And you'll die. He gulped at the thought of dying on the operating table. He always thought he'd just die of old age. Maybe still trying to play with his equally old canine friend. Maybe with Sakura after a lifetime of marriage. I can't die now. No way. I'll sign your consent to bring me back if I go under. She smiled as she nodded, handing him the form. He quickly signed and handed it back to her. Lay back. We need to do this soon before more cells spread. Kiba complied, laying himself down on the cold steel table. Akamaru came up to his left, licking his master. Good luck. I'll be okay, boy. I promise. First thing we'll do is go chow down on some ramen when I get out of here. Arf. That's right. Now go wait outside. I'll be done before you know it. Besides, someone has to keep Ma company when she shows up. Arf. He licked his master once more before walking outside, laying down next to the chair closest to the double door. All right, Kiba, Tsunade said, taking an oxygen mask and handing it over to him. I want you to count back from 10 when this is put over you. The mask went over and the cloth strap went behind his head. Go ahead. He sighed to himself as his nervousness rose. I'm not going to lose. Not when I have everything waiting for me. I hope you're fucking ready, Yukon. 10-9-8-7-6. His eyes seemed to have drastically increased in weight as they fell almost immediately. His fatigue rising immensely as he could feel sleep come upon him. 5-4-3, and with that he fell into sleep. Let's begin. Tsunade ordered the rest of the staff as they scrubbed in. Sakura, scene change, snow. That's all that was around him. His vision finally adjusted to his surroundings. Slow falling small traces of snow on a white plain lay in front of him. It was still daytime, but the sun was suffocated by clouds. Looking around, he could clearly see he was alone. His only other surroundings included several trees, most of which had lost their leaves due to the weather. Where am I? He started walking forward. After about half a mile, he crossed over the top of a steep hill. On the horizon was a small collection of bright lights. In the background of it appeared to be a Ferris wheel. Hey! It's the Winter Festival. He smiled as he made his way down the hill and made his way towards the festival. First thing I need to do is grab a funnel cake. Then a cheeseburger, and he stopped as he observed the festival. The lights were on, rides were being carried out, and the buzzes and rings of games being won were filling the air. But it was completely abandoned. What? Where is everyone? Kiba took a few steps inside, hoping to find any signs of life. He sniffed the air, but his sense of smell was hindered by the extreme cold. I gotta find someone. There's no way this place can be abandoned. Exploring the empty festival, his results turned up the same. Nothing. No one. The tingling sense of someone watching him burdened him the moment he walked in, but he thought he was just being paranoid. If there was nobody here, why would somebody be watching him? And for that matter, where did everybody go? The entire Land of Fire was invited to the festival. It was almost always packed, but here he was the only one in a fully loaded amusement park. His searching came to a halt as he looked over at a small building. House of Funny Mirrors. His eyes widened at the sight of a younger boy sitting at the entrance of the house. His face was buried in his knees, his arms wrapping around them. He looked as if he had been hungry and crying. Hey! Are you okay, little guy? Kiba called out to the child as he approached him. Suddenly the child stood up. His face was covered by a hood, making it hard to distinguish. When Kiba looked at him closer, he came to a startling realization. He stood maybe 5 feet 6 inches. His attire was simple brown shorts, blue shoes, and a gray hoodie. The uniqueness of this jacket was its fur. Bursting out of the cufflinks of the arms and screaming out of the hood, hiding his face, Kiba stared in shock as he realized who he was looking at. It was him.
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.